Welcome to the GreatBase Tennis Podcast, episode 143. I'm Steve Smith. I've been called a lot worse. Very fortunate to be with Ricardo Acioly. He's going to be our guest. Ricardo and I go way back. He was 16 and I was 26. Ricardo, thanks for coming on.
Great pleasure to be here.
Let me just read your bio quickly and we get in this because we go way back to the beginning where we ask you what type of baby food you liked. It seems like yesterday was 42 years ago where I met you. Considered to have one of the most complete and successful careers in Brazilian tennis. World-class player, held top 50 ranking, competed against McEnroe, Sampras, Agassi, Becker, Wielander. Those are all number one players. Coached world-class players, Marcel Rios won, Gabriel Sabatini, Guga, Gustavo Kuerten, Fernando Meligini.
Yeah.
Juniors and doubles players, Grand Slam champions, was an ATP officer, ATP tournament executive, owned his own academy where he developed juniors into pros, TV commentator, represented his country in Davis Cup and in the Olympics as a player and as a coach. This is amazing. In Davis Cup, one of many successes. It'd be fun to ask you all these things. Led his team to victory over Spain in Spain when Spain had 4 top teners. Carried the Olympic torch for Brazil. He's currently working down the street, Boca Raton. We're speaking to you from Boynton Beach, Boca Raton, Florida, the Director of Strategic Development for the Everett Tennis Academy. 1964, let's go back to the very beginning. Yeah. I was just teasing about the baby food. I was teasing too. I asked Ricardo before we started if we want to do this in English, Portuguese, or Spanish. He told me I could pick. He saw a guitar downstairs. He told us he plays a guitar, so I said we could go get it. He said no thanks. But anyway, tell us about the suburb, the village nearby Rio de Janeiro. Set the scene. What was it like? Your birthplace, your beginning days in tennis. I know your parents played. You're born into a tennis family.
Yeah, this is something that I kind of joke about because my mom told me that she played with me on her womb until she was 7 months pregnant. So I said, yeah, well, I could hear the balls already, going back and forth. So, my parents played, she played, my brother played. My mom is 90 at the moment, and she still plays tennis up today. So a lot of tennis history in the family. My dad has passed away, but he played until he was 83. So a lot of years. My brother also played. He didn't play on the tour, but he played very good juniors.
Older brother,
yeah.
How many years older?
7 years older.
Oh, so you listened to him?
Yeah. Yeah, he was actually the reason why I came to the U.S. He came before me, so. And then I got into competitive tennis in Brazil. And little by little, just basic. I also played other sports. I played basketball when I was young. I swam, also competitively. So I was doing well in all sports. But tennis at one point said, okay.
Did you play football? I mean, that's the land of Pele.
Yeah, no, everybody plays football in Brazil.
Yeah.
At a young age. Nowadays, a little bit different, but at my time, if you didn't play football, what we call football, soccer, but you were like an outcast or something like that because everybody was out in the street, so you had to play some football, and it's like a religion back home.
So your mother understood the Wayne Bryan program that you have to start in the embryonic stage.
That is true.
With tell me about Maria Bueno. I would think your mother or your father must have really loved Maria Bueno.
Yes, she was an icon in Brazil, but sadly we heard little about her because. I don't know. I mean, I got to know Maria Esther, and that's what we call her, Maria Esther Bueno, obviously. More when I got on into the international scene of tennis. And then the first time I stepped into Wimbledon, I saw how big she was. It was unbelievable. I didn't know how big she was when I was in Brazil. I knew she was like, obviously a huge champion and won everything, but then the first time I walked into Wimbledon and I was meeting with her and I saw what was happening around, I said, Jesus, she's like a legend.
Yeah.
And then I understood how big she was. And then what happened to her, actually, what I felt good was that at the later part of her career, of her life actually, she was like getting the actual, how do you say, the actual
recognition.
exactly. So
They named, when you had the Olympics in Brazil, the stadium was named after her, right?
right, exactly. It was named after her. And then she commentated on TV. She started commentating on TV.
Yeah, she was loved by everybody.
Yeah.
Oh, that's one thing with the young listeners. They can always go to YouTube. After her, Yvonne Goolagong came along, and she was so graceful, and they always compared her to Maria Bueno.
Right. Yeah.
With, what was the older brother like? Was was he tough? Was he easygoing? Was he, your brother's keeper? Was he knocking you over the head?
No, he was.
What was his style?
He was a cool guy. He was much older, 7 years older. So there was no issue in terms of fighting. I couldn't fight with him. So actually, one time I hit him with a broom in the head, and he fainted because that was the only way I could stand up to him. But other than that, he was like almost a mentor to me. So
yeah.
he actually coached me for a while when I was young. So he was, by the time I was 12, 13, 14, he would walk on the court and, be drilling with me, be pushing me to do all these things. And he was a guy that kind of propelled me to play competitive tennis. He was a little bit ahead of his time in Brazil, which I think was important for me. So much of my tennis I have to kind of give back to him. He was the guy that really gave me a north. Hey, this way is the way to go. You can do this, you can do that. And although we fought a little bit when I remember one day we were coming back from the club, and we were both in the car with my mom, and we got into a huge fight just right after practice. And I just basically said, "Mom, stop the car." And I got off the car and I started walking. And I started calling him names, and my mom was going like, relax. I said, no, but then, half an hour later we're hugging each other. And
yeah.
But he was a great influence for me.
No, the power of an older brother. I'm from a family, I'm the youngest of 6. I always tell people I have 3 sets of parents and one easygoing brother, but I had my parents and 2 sisters, 2 brothers that were telling me what to do. And I think typically the parents are much nicer than the siblings. They just cut to the chase and tell you what you need to do.
Yeah.
But no, sibling order. And then also when I said, 7 years, I guess the magic number is that if it's 4 years, there's a chance that the younger sibling will listen to the older sibling. I have 2 sons that are 18 months apart, so for Irish twins, so forget it. They don't. Back in the day, they certainly didn't listen to each other.
Yeah.
I remember in meeting you, and for our listeners, I've run into Ricardo. I've certainly followed your career, but to see you at a couple of junior terms in ITF or this Battle of Boca, which is a nice service that's offered in Boca Raton, a UTR tournament every weekend, that you told me that you were 16. That really blew me away. But tell me, you were one of the best juniors in the world at 14, and then how did you go? Tell us about that, Orange Bowl, and that success. And then all of a sudden, I remember asking you, how'd you end up in New Mexico? But tell us about getting to the Orange Bowl and all that first.
So New Mexico is my brother. My brother was an exchange student quite a few years before in a program that was called American Field Service. So he lived for 1 year in Albuquerque with his family, the Hensleys. And that's the reason I came to the U.S. later on, because at the time when I was 15 in Brazil, I was way ahead of school. So by the time I was starting my 15 to 16 year, I was going to have my senior year in high school. So it was going to be impossible for me to play tennis like I was doing and, study. So let me go back just a couple of years. Orange Bowl.
Yeah.
So I get Orange Bowl 14s, and I get to the finals. Funny enough, who did I play in the finals? The guy that I played every day back home. Can you believe it?
What's his name?
Carlos Chabalgoiti. Carlos
Yeah.
was a legend in terms of young junior tennis. He won the 12s, the 14s, and the 16s in the Orange Bowl.
Wow.
And we were from the same town. So we trained with the same coach. Can you imagine that? We came from Brazil together, and then we played the finals of the Orange Bowl. on the 14s.
Well, your coach had to be doing something right.
Yes, that's right. That's right. So by then, the following year, I come back to the Orange Bowl, and that's when I said, hey, I can't stay in Brazil. So 1 year later, after playing the finals in the 14s, I was 15. Next December, I come over, and I already had planned a little bit, hey, if I stay here in Brazil, I'm going to probably either have to choose tennis or studies. And I didn't want to stop studying. It was a choice of myself. I saw some of my friends were starting to go that path. We were very good. I'm talking about the best Brazilian kids. They were very good. And everybody was thinking, oh, we're going to quit. And I said, gee, I don't want to do that. So I said, what's the option? And my brother said, hey, go to the U.S. You can, go to the U.S. You can play tennis there, and you can study, and then you find your way. And that's where I went to Albuquerque with the same family he lived with, because they had gone to Brazil, and they had met my parents, so we got to be friends. Funny enough, we keep in touch up until today. I consider them my brothers, my American brothers. They live here. Two of them live in Florida. One lives in North Carolina. And our American mother, 94 years old, she's still alive.
Wow, that's great.
And she was playing tennis too. She played tennis too. So
wow. Let's go back, and I want to talk about when I met you, and that obviously answers a lot of those questions for me. It's a good review, but. Daniel Coyle's book, The Talent Code. There's small pockets of places where, whether someone's learning the violin or dance. Tell us a little bit, how do two kids from a suburb of Rio de Janeiro get to the 14s?
Well, actually, at that time, I was living in Brasilia.
Oh, okay.
In Brasilia.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, in the capital of Brazil. So I was from Rio.
The city they made in the jungle.
Exactly. In the middle of Brazil, yeah. Yeah, exactly. So it was out of nowhere. They just built the city in 1960. So it was a young city.
It wasn't built in the jungle?
No, Brazil is not in the middle of the jungle. It's the middle of the country, but it's not. Yeah, it's not like the Amazon jungle. It's a little bit further north. But I mean, yeah, it's nowhere basically. It's nowhere.
I must have got that wrong listening to a couple guys that we'll talk about who didn't speak English like you did. So tell us about the coach.
The coach was a guy very obsessed with tennis. He just loved tennis. He played himself, had a very funny serve, like a hook serve. I'm glad he didn't teach me that one. But, he was a guy that was always into... Also, I think he was a little bit ahead of his time, too. He was, studying a little bit more. He was into, drilling. He was into things that most people didn't do at that time, So it's a bit more tactical. He actually tried to impose a way of playing to me, and my brother was fighting with him all the time. Don't put him on the baseline all the time. He likes to go to the net, so he was always, let him be. He wanted me to be more solid, and I never liked that, to be staying all the. My friend Carlos was always solid, the most solid kid I've ever seen in my life. But I wanted to go to the net and be more diverse. And he had that idea, but my brother was the one that said, no, let him be like he likes it, so. I think that influence of my brother was really good in that time. So that coach was a guy that guided us. And he was, interesting enough, you know what he did before we came to the Orange Bowl? We came to Harry Hopman's academy. So 2 weeks before the Orange Bowl, we went to train over there for 2 weeks. And then I was in heaven because I saw all of these guys, everyone practicing. I got to hit with a few of the pros, and I'm going Jesus, this is heaven for me.
Wow.
And Mr. Hoffman walked on court with me, with those shoes that were all they slashed, and you drill you had to go for every ball. I mean, that, Bardmore, I think it was called Bardmore.
Right, Bardmore. First, it was at Treasure Island. He was in New York first. It was Treasure Island and the Bardmore, yeah.
So, and then that for me is like heaven, So tennis has started gaining on my veins. I mean,
with hearing that, I can remember the first time I saw Mr. Hoffman feed balls. And the shoes that you're referring to is that anybody who's taught tennis and they never leave the court, they generally have problems with their feet. But he would cut off the tops of the shoes because it's problems with his feet, his toes. But I remember it was a group from the Netherlands, and he was feeding balls, and he was going, lovely dear. That's it, lovely dear. And he was feeding the ball on the top of the baseline, and these girls were touching the net, goldie drill, and they weren't even making contact. The feeds were so tough. but they just kept sprinting and sprinting because they had so much respect for him.
Yes, yes. And I was always, when I was there, I was always watching. He was always on the golf cart.
Yeah.
So I see, hey, he's coming around our court. Get ready. So then, Albuquerque happens, and then I was in the U.S.
How long were you in Albuquerque?
6 months. I just did my last semester of high school.
Did you speak English before you came to the States?
0.
Really?
Yeah. So.
Well, let me set the stage for our listeners. So the boys from Brazil, this is how it really works. It's not that sophisticated in college tennis. So the college coach gets one really good player from a certain country. So in this case, Brazil. And then they call the player into the office and say, hey, you got any friends back home? And yeah, I got some friends back home who I could do this. And then the coach wants him to say, are they any good? And then if the kid goes, yeah, they're a little better than me. And say if that one, whether it's Sweden or Germany, and there has been many cases. I remember, I think it was Auburn one time that had 6 players from South Africa, or Minnesota had 6 players from Sweden. Yep. And then if, say the kid's 3 in the lineup, and he goes, yeah, my friend, he goes, you're younger than me, who wins? Well, he beats me most of the time. They're like, I want that kid. So it's not that sophisticated. But the boys from Brazil, I was just curious, and I spent, for our listeners, spent a lot of time in the same room as Ricardo, because you were always stringing rackets.
Right.
Tell us about that. Red head, right?
Yeah, head professional.
Gut strings.
Gut. Exactly. And I broke so many, strings.
Every day.
Yeah, exactly. And I was stringing all the time. That's why when you said that to me, I said, geez, I remember that perfectly. I was always stringing. I got to be so good that I was stringing rackets like, I don't know. Maybe,
every day.
Yeah, every day. So, I mean, basically, and stringing gut is delicate.
Right.
Because, if you mess up a little bit, then it just ruins it. So you had to get, to know how to do it. I mean, it was artwork, to be stringing that. And
I'll tell you a side story about it. So I come in, you're 16, and why I was shocked, because this probably comes from your background with your coach, your brother, your parents. You were the alpha dog. You were in charge, and you were the leader, and then you were 16. So I came in and was given the privilege of revising this general recreation curriculum. So the tennis coach actually, he worked for me. He taught one class, and it was like, I remember one time, he went to talk to the dean, and the dean said he was very happy with me because he really respected Braden. And his daughter, Judy, I helped her, and she became an All-American. But what happened is we started this community program, and then his brother was in the area as a club pro, and then we had this dollar clinic. It just created some politics where, so I remember he went to meet with my advisor, my boss, Dean Richard Minner, and that's where I had the line where I was told I was rocking the boat. I go, no, the boat's underwater. So the one thing is that the college needed to switch some things around, is that stringing, my budget and the team budget was just under tennis. And, the players wanted gut, they were buying gut. And I was in a position where I wanted to make phone calls and get people to come to the program and then get people jobs. But we eventually had it set up where there was 2 different budgets. But I was, intellectual curiosity, or myself being a dumb jock, because I remember just saying, why do you speak English so well? And that's where I remember,
right.
You went to high school in New Mexico.
Right.
But that's not something that someone who's not going to, you're ranked 1 or 2, 3 in the world in junior tennis, and
yes.
then that's just that move would not happen today.
No, exactly. I just think about it and said that wouldn't have happened today at all. It was like, there was no information at that time. It was just basically, my parents, the experience of my brother, let's go that way, and that was it. And then
great advice, really, in so many ways.
Yeah, and then once I reached U.S., then I started, understanding more a little bit. But even so, it was, I was thinking that, imagine that happened, on days like today. I mean, it definitely would be. I would have gone to Albuquerque.
Yeah.
But on a personal level, it was an important part of my life that I treasure up until today. So some people there with me and up until today. So it was unreal. It was unreal.
The Boys from Brazil. There was a movie.
Yeah, that's right.
So it was yourself, Renato Figueiredo,
right,
It was Ricardo Henny
Yes.
and Cesar Victor.
Yes.
That was it from Brazil, right?
Yes, exactly.
And back in the day, the masses used to be in Latin, and Caesar's middle name was Holy Ghost, Espiritu de Santos.
Exactly. That's right.
People had no idea. I used to call him the Holy Ghost.
Yes.
But when Henny came, when they all came, of course, I was going to make the tennis teaching program difficult because we were perceived as easy underwater basket weaving. Anybody can take that program. But I can remember Henny, he basically could just say one word, computers. And the coach was trying to steer him into being in my program. But I remember the coach being upset with me as I took, I didn't put him in the classes I was in charge of. And he went down the road for computer science. But
Yes.
Renato and Cesar, they ended up being the program. So I spent a lot of time with Renato and then Cesar. But then Ricardo stayed in the summer. And he went to the university. It was in the same town. There was Tyler Junior College and then Tyler, Texas.
Yes.
University
of Texas at Tyler.
Yeah, it was NAI school. So
Yeah.
he was around and he helped him with tennis teaching. He worked with me. I worked in our summer camp. He was our movie star.
Yeah.
But no, I remember the coach. He had a resurfacing company. So I had nothing to do with your tennis except for I remember running practice when like the matches were over the middle of November, but that's where you were the leader.
Yeah. You were saying about the resurfacing. I did some resurfacing.
Hardest job in tennis.
I did that a few times, and I remember that he told me, "Oh, you have to do this and that, this and that." And one weekend, I went to resurface a court. I don't know if I was with one of the guys that was together with me. And there was something for us to do in that day, something to go to a lake or something. And I didn't wait for the proper time to do like the second and the third coating. I just started doing one after the other. And then a few days later, he said, "What did you do? This is not right." I'm going, "Coach, I did everything. I'm sorry." He used to lend me the truck that, it was all painted up, it was somebody. I remember that for sure. Yeah.
At the time, the coach at Tyler Junior College, people have to understand that junior college tennis was stout. It was strong.
It was strong, yeah.
There used to be 32 teams in Florida. Now, for a long time, there was 0. Now they're back up to 2, men's teams.
Oh.
And the coach, Fred Niffen, the late Fred Niffen, at first he was going to wave the American flag. And he had all Americans. He wasn't going to use foreigners. And then all of a sudden, okay, I want to win. So he went with foreign players. When you were there, who else rounded out the team besides your teammates from Brazil?
Well, there were 2 years. 1 year, there were a couple of Chilean guys, Dannenberg,
Yeah.
the Dannenberg brothers, and then Lance Watson, which was an American guy who went to UT. Doug Watson, also Doug Hall.
Doug Hall.
Yeah, Doug Hall also went to UT, I think, and Scott Nichols. Those were the guys. And
Well, let me just go through that. First of all, I'm grading papers. I got a little bit smarter as I went along, as that we started putting a lot of the testing on video because it took so long to grade papers. We went from having a handful of students to well over 100. And I'm grading papers, and I'm watching basketball, ESPN. It was Texas. Now, Lance, it was Doug Hall and Lance Watson, right?
Yeah.
So they're very good tennis players. They're on a team that wins nationals.
Right.
So obviously they're your teammates.
Right.
But they weren't good enough to play at the University of Texas.
Right.
We had Steve Denton on, for example. Steve Denton, Kevin Curran, they're
Right.
big time players,
Yes,
Wimbledon
yes.
finalists,
Yes.
Grand Slam titles in doubles. So I'm grading papers and I look up, and Lance Watson's playing for the University of Texas basketball.
I saw him on TV too.
So so I get a hold of him and I go, "Tell me how this happened." Is that the coach came in and he was unhappy with everybody, and he basically kicked everybody off the team. One of our students who did so well in college tennis, Craig Tiley, he did that with the University of Illinois. He goes, "Okay." I was just telling a story about a coach who's at the University of Arizona that his name escapes me right now, but he basically did the same thing. Is documented, okay, your attendance, your attitude, documented all, and it's okay. And Tiley had to go to the intramural department to get players, but that's what they did with Lance Watson. But Lance Watson's story I like is they had a banquet and they had famous Bobby Knight come in and speak at the University of Texas banquet. And Watson comes in late and Coach Knight just stops his speech and says, "Hey, kid, if you were in my program, you and I would meet tomorrow at 4:45 in the morning." And he stands up. He's got that Texas yes or no sir language, and like a politician, just just like this guy's going to be a senator. So he goes, "Sir, first of all, I apologize for being late. There's no excuse. But I will tell you, tomorrow morning, you're going to be there at 4:45. I'll be there at 4:30 with bells on." And so then they started. Knight said for a while he just forgot his speech, and he's just going one-on-one with this guy. And then he kind of goes, "I like this kid. I like this kid. This kid could be on my team." But that's how strong junior college tennis was. Is that they went to Texas and played at the intramural level. And back in this, and of course this was, I met you in '81, but like say the early '80s for sure. But throughout the '70s, everybody was playing tennis in America. Yeah. Some baseball player who could really throw the ball. Next thing you know, this guy's got a great serve, and anybody and everybody was playing. But
and then the other team was Renato and Ricardo and Cesar, and then we had Bob Wiley and Mark Wilder. Mark Wilder also mathematician. I think he's a professor in
I believe he's at Mississippi State, and he's in charge of accounting, or he's in charge of that department.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we knew he was brilliant then. He was a table tennis player.
Exactly. I was very good.
He was big time.
No. When he arrived, I said sometimes we'd go and play some table tennis, and I was very good. And we started. Let's play. Hey, Mark, get over there. And I'm going like, Jesus, I cannot beat. He would toy with me. I mean, he was like
he's like one of the best in the country. Yeah.
Exactly. He was another level. I mean, he was.
And that's how he played tennis.
Exactly. That's how he played tennis.
No, when I was there, I was 26, and I didn't have a speaking part with the team. And having grown up in sports, it's like, wait, this is not my position. I'm not coaching these guys. Although I was coaching the people who took the tennis tech classes, like Figueiredo and Holy Ghost. So, Wilder, he had these strong legs and he could just fight. He wasn't going to hit a volley anytime soon.
That's right.
So, this gentleman saw somebody in Mississippi, a young kid named Holden, who plays really well, has really good technique. And so I ended up having a telephone conversation, and he works at the same university. And he starts talking about Mark Wilder's game. And I said, well, tell Mark you talked to me and tell him this is how he plays. And this guy's going, how do you know that? How do you know that? Because I watched it, we're on the same campus. I just watched him play every day, and he was a very tough out.
He was.
He was going to get every ball back, in and out of the corners.
It was tough to beat him, yeah.
With, the tennis, I think of Figueiredo.
Finals of number 2 flight nationals. Mark Wilder against Michael Pernfors.
Oh, is that right?
Yes, number 2.
And Pernfors, for our listeners, I mean, he was in the French Open, not in the final.
And he won NCAA next 2 years, two years in a row.
Yeah, he won 2 years at Georgia. Seminole, and then 2 years at Georgia. I remember he played George Bezekny, who was his teammate at Georgia, and that jumped out at me because, I mean, obviously over the years, you're in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, and I watched Bezekny play as a 12 and under player. Before we went on air, we started talking about Robbie Seguzo, and I used to watch all these kids play. And then he's in the NCAA finals, and I remember he had that little dip on the backhand where he would reset it low high, and then when I was at Seguzo Basket, which is now Everett's, he was there training as a pro, and his backhand was the same as it was in the 12s, and it's like, wow, it's amazing how people will.
I played George at Georgia at the Southern Intercollegiate in the semifinals. It was the greatest experience playing against him.
At Georgia
with all everybody barking.
Yeah.
That's great. I mean, that's college tennis. It was unbelievable. So, yeah.
No, that's like, we'll have to talk to you about Davis Cup, but that was like a Davis Cup experience for you, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm. I love that.
With some of the team players, we'll have to talk about Bob Wiley. I think of a sitcom. I mean, all the years I was there, I was there throughout the 80s, 10 years basically, 81, 91. And if we were to have a TV show based on that, Wiley would be the lead character.
I bet.
But Scott Nichols, he was an amazing player.
He was.
Like, I was doing a thing in Philadelphia for coaches, and he came to it. He's like 35 years old. It was many years ago now.
Wow.
I mean, hopefully I get there, knock on wood, get to be 70 here in a few years, 68 now. But he was a classic player.
He was.
Just totally the opposite of Mark Wilder.
For sure. Yes, he was. He was very, very interesting guy to see play. Yeah, he was good. He was
Somewhere along the line, it must have been one of the other years, because it was 2 years to be in junior college. Remember Figueiredo came back and he had lost to, he goes, I lost this guy from, I think he was playing flight. I thought it was flight 3. Maybe it was the year before, but he lost to Figueiredo, I thought. And Figueiredo lost to Pernfors one of the 2 years.
Well. No, I don't think so. Mark played Michael in the finals of the number 2 flight. Yeah.
Did you guys would have played them in a dual match or?
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, or maybe in a like some tournament.
Yeah.
With, you played one.
I played one. Yeah. Well, in the first year, Scott played one. I played 2, and then in the second year, I played 1, and Mark played 2. Mark Wilder played 2.
With, let's talk about Wiley. These guys had a house. You and I were talking about that. Our listeners get a vision on this. They called it the tennis house, but in the front of the house was a tree, and all these tennis players. There was 4, maybe then there was 8. I used to have a little pickup truck, and lab would start at 8:00, and the program wasn't like that years later. But it was like, okay, I would organize a drill, and I would go get those guys and pull them out of bed, and it was like 2 miles away from the tennis courts. But every time that somebody would wear out a pair of shoes, they would tie it in the tree.
Yes.
And especially in the wintertime, it looks so cool. There's all these shoes. It was interesting. The neighbors never said anything. And
yes, it was unbelievable. That house was like the hangout place for everyone. And I guess it continued for so many years.
With, I could see that happening where they held the lease. But then, of course, I had to stay away because I was the faculty member, but the stories about the pajama parties and the toga parties.
Yeah, I won't go into that, but yeah, the pajama parties, the toga parties, and yeah, I have some pictures of those. I still have those.
I thought you were going to say you didn't go. You were stringing rackets.
Yeah, I was stringing rackets, right?
With, I have this down in my notes. I used to, we had people come in from all over the world. I mean, the tennis team first, but then the tennis teaching program became very international. And I used to write this on the board. I was going to teach everybody to speak Texan. And it's CM Snakes, and then it's MR Not Steaks, and then it's OSAR, and then it's CM Beady Eyes, and then this line is the best, LIB, MR Snakes. But I used to have some fun with that. Are you still in touch with those guys? Figueroa passed away, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Sad.
Unfortunately, yeah. Yes, I'm in touch with them. I'm in touch with Ricardo. I'm in touch with Cesar. With the Brazilian guys all the time. With Bob Wiley, yeah. Sometimes we exchange on Facebook. And Lance Watson, I actually spoke with him a few years ago.
Wow.
I think he's a lawyer now.
Yeah, I remember hearing that.
And
that was a given, though.
Yeah, exactly. And Doug, we exchanged some time on Facebook too. And yeah. It's a period of my life that I'll never forget. I was the youngest one, So everybody.
But you were the alpha dog. You were.
Exactly.
You were. Of course, I would now. In listening to you about your older brother, I didn't know 7 years. That's a big difference in the impact he had, or just. But you had already played tennis at a pretty high level. I mean, to be 1 or 2 in the world in the 14s, and.
Yeah.
But no, I remember the sound of the ball coming off your racket. You were an all-court player.
Yeah. I went to play one of on that summer that I was here. I went to play the U.S. hard courts, the juniors. They allowed me to play that. And who did I draw in the first match, in the first round? Jonathan Cantor, number 1 seed, the number 1 U.S. player. And he beat me 7-5 in the third, or 6-4 and 7-5 in the third. So, I mean, I remember those. And then I said, well, this is the best American guy. And, I'm right there with him. So, and then years later on, I met, him. We met together again on the tour, but there was no communication at that time. Had I known my level right then, maybe I would have gone to a different place. I don't know how it goes, but it was fate for me to go to. Well, the reason I went to Texas also is that my family, Francis and Douglas Hensley, the ones I live with in New Mexico, they were from Texas, and they went to UT. So they had some relationship with people around the area, and they felt that TJC was like with the best junior college in the U.S.
Yeah.
And since I was such a young kid, they felt I had an offer to go to University of New Mexico to stay in Albuquerque, but I didn't want to stay there. I said I want to go somewhere else.
That's smart, yeah.
So, and they said, well, you're so young, you're 16, everybody's going to be 18 or older, and they said this is going to be a good fit for you. I said, okay, let's go. So it was a great fit for me. So
with that, you lost some time where you get sick, right? Before you went to South Carolina.
Yes, I got hepatitis. Summertime, I go back to Brazil. I start playing ATP. I get my first ATP points at 17. And the last tournament I'm playing, I qualified in the Challenger. I'm playing in Argentina the next round, and it's in Brasilia. Look, my hometown that that I was living. I wake up in the morning, I go to pee, and it's like Coca-Cola. It's black. I go, Jesus, there's something wrong. So I go to my parents and say, hey, I'm peeing, and the color is not yellow. It's like Coca-Cola. And I go, oh, you're sick. You have probably hepatitis. And I'm going like, really? But I'm going to play this match. And they couldn't, oh, no. So I went on and played anyway. I almost won, lost 6-4 in the third. And then they took me to the doctor right straight away. And the doctor said, go to bed. And I was like off for 6 months. I couldn't do anything. So I was like completely, that took me off for a while. And
so then during that time, you're back home, and then you did come back to the States to go to South Carolina.
Yes. And then I went to South Carolina. And then in South Carolina, I had another setback. Also, South Carolina was great because, it was a jump from, TJC, and then playing at Division I. We were top 20, so there were like 15 in the country. It was a very good team, good conference to play. My first semester, I did really, really well, which was the fall. Like I said, this tournament, the Southern Intercollegiate, which is the biggest tournament in the fall in the South, I was in the finals. I beat Bezekny in the semis, and beat a lot of other guys. A lot of guys that were on tour with me were playing that tournament. It was unbelievable. And then we go to, that semester ends. I go play in Milwaukee, which was like the national indoors, the first big tournament that was in the year. I was in the semis playing Roberto Saad. Yeah. And I tore a ligament in my knee. I slipped on the court, fell down, and that took me off the court for 10 months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I didn't play tennis for 10 months.
So
and look, funny enough, I told coach, said, hey, coach, things go well. At the end of the semester, I'm going to go pro. And then that went away. And then obviously I finished school. And then I went to play pro after it, but in a different...
Did you have a medical red shirt during that time?
Yes. Mm-hmm. So, and then what happened, in a sense, was good for me because I did a double major. I changed my major a little bit. Kind of grew a little bit more in terms of a lot of things that I wanted to do in terms of my life. And by the time when I finished school, when I graduated South Carolina, I wasn't really certain to play on the tour. I already had a job to be here in the U.S. working, and I felt like, but I said, hey, I want to go to Europe. I want to be there for at least 2 or 3 months. I want to travel. I've never been to Europe before. I'm going to play some money tournaments so I can stay there and this and that. I already had ATP points because I always played during the summer. Yeah. And then by the time I got to Europe and I played some challenges, I qualified, I won a few rounds here and there, and I started meeting all the guys from junior time and that were doing well. They were, top 200, top 100. And I'm going like, Jesus, I can play with these guys. And then I said, hey, give me 6 months. I'll come back in December. And then I never came back. I said, hey, that's it. And then very soon I was in the top 100 in doubles. And then I was getting close to being in the Brazilian Davis Cup team, and then all of a sudden things just started going.
South Carolina, Ron Smar, class act. Gentlemen, tell us a little bit about working on or playing for him.
We keep in touch up until today. Unbelievable, great guy. He was the one that recruited me. He was always positive. That was something that he always gave it to me, and that I felt that there was no bad feelings with him. Always every time something happened, he was always there. He was key to me in terms when I got injured. He took care of me like his own son, and all the support from the school. And like I said, the team was well managed. I think that also that's something, the key part of being on a team. Having the leadership.
Yeah, he had a long career as a college coach. From there, he went to Rice, but I believe before that he was at Colorado. He actually started at junior college.
Right.
I don't know how many wins he had, but
yeah, I sent him I sent him an All-American from my academy. I sent him to Rice. So a few years later, I said, Coach, got a great kid here. He's bright. He wants to go pro. He's not ready. I tell the family, hey, don't. And he can get into Rice. He's going to be a great kid. And he was like, I think he got to like 8, but it was an All-American for Rice. And
I coached a Japanese player, Take Morita, who played for Coach Smar. They were top 10 in the country at Rice.
Yeah.
Then after South Carolina, the coach who came in, he had coached Robbie Seguso and Ken Flack.
My senior year.
Oh, is he so?
My senior year, Kent DeMars.
Kent DeMars.
Yes. So my senior year, Kent DeMars came in, and that's why and he brought in a couple guys from Edwardsville, from
the NAIA school, right?
Right. Exactly. So a couple guys that came in. One of them was my doubles partner, Dave Delcini from New Jersey.
The word through the industry that obviously later on Seguso and Flack did so well in world-class tennis, that he really had a major influence on doubles.
Yes. Yeah, he had a different approach, and I liked it. I was just with him, I think it was 1 year. It was I thought maybe a semester, but it was no. It was the whole full senior year. He was very structured in terms of practice. So he had patterns to do, a bit more formal in terms of, hey, let's do this, return, cross court, do this. He had some patterns into the coaching that helped me quite a bit too. Kind of made I was a very free player. I like to do everything. So
yeah,
he kind of put me into a better frame, let's say so, and that helped. That helped. Yeah.
Oh, certainly it can go the other way, but I do think, within reason, it's good to be influenced by many coaches.
Yeah.
Like Roger Federer said, it had the right coaches at the right time.
Yes, that's right.
With and what about the transition to the tour? I mean, that's not something that's easily done. It's a war of financial attrition. I mean, to make it as a touring pro, to stay out there. Tell us a little bit about that. The transition.
The transition is pressure. If you don't have money from family, or if you didn't save it, I mean, I don't think someone goes to a plan of making a savings account to go play pro some certain years later. So it's got to be from the family or some type of sponsorship or support. It's pressure all the time. So during my time, there was no sponsorship. There was no. Although I did have a little bit of help from Brazil once I got to be known a little bit. Back, from disappearing from juniors and then appearing again, because you come to the U.S. I disappeared basically.
Yeah.
So, but my parents were able to help me a little bit, and fortunately I was able to win from the bat. Just winning, and by my wins I was able to keep on playing, and what helped me was that I had very good success in doubles. Very quickly in the first year I was already in the top 100. So by then the doubles was keeping me afloat all the time. I was starting to play in the major events. I could play into the Grand Slams and all of a sudden it's a different world that, having to stay on playing. I remember the first summer that I played, I even got a clipping from a friend a couple of days ago from a tournament in Midlothian and Virginia, which is right by Richmond. And I played Johnny Levine in the finals. And it was a satellite at that time, so it wasn't futures. You had to play.
Right.
You had to play 5 weeks to get the points on the ATP. So everybody, played those 5 tournaments, else you couldn't do it. So
Well, it was 4, and then the last one was called the Masters.
the Masters, exactly. So you remember that this tournament was the first week I played in Augusta. I lost to Gary Muller, lefty from South Africa, who was very good. So these tournaments were so tough. The second week, I beat Peter Duhan, who had beaten Becker.
87, I think, at Wimbledon.
In Wimbledon, exactly. So, and I get to the finals against Johnny Levine. So I lose to Johnny Levine in the finals. Okay, Johnny Levine was from Arizona. So next week we go to Winston-Salem. Go to the finals against who? Johnny Levine again. So I lose to Johnny Levine again. Jesus. So fourth week, Midlothian, Johnny Levine again in the finals. I finally beat him. So then we go into the Masters, which was in Philadelphia. And then basically he had first place, I had second place. We couldn't change it. So it didn't matter. I got to the semis, and he in the second round, he tanked because it didn't make much sense. But then, you start making a little bit of money, then my ranking just went up, and then all of a sudden you start playing more here and there. That summer I finished, I go to US Open, I qualified, and I played who in the first round? Cássio Mota, a Brazilian guy, can you believe it? Very funny. So we played on what we call the hamburger court. I don't know if you remember how it used to be the US Open, the big stadium. And beneath the major court, the
grandstand?
The other side of the grandstand. The grandstand was on the left, and then the major court was like, I don't know if it's Louis Armstrong, I guess was the name. It wasn't Ash. Yeah. It wasn't Arthur Ashe. It was Louis Armstrong. So I used to call it the hamburger court because there was like the hamburger stand right there. Yeah. And there were like a couple of courts in the back right there, and all the smoke from the hamburgers were there. And we played that court. And we played 5 sets, and I lost 6-3 in the 5th, something like that. I was really bummed because had I won, I would have played Becker the next day or 2 days later on center court. So it would have been, a great experience. I love that. I love playing on center court and all.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that was my, first year and a half on tour. And then from then on, things, I was already making Davis Cup team. I was top 100 in doubles. And then once you start making a little bit, in Brazil, making Davis Cup, you start making a little bit more money because you get a little bit of sponsorship here and there. And that helps. So that transition for me was quick.
Yeah.
If it takes long, it's tough.
Well, it's certainly the emphasis on doubles had to help you out from college.
Yeah, exactly. I always played well doubles. So
plus, you like to go forward, you're all court player.
Yeah, exactly. This was my style.
Were you a specialist as far as the deuce court, ad court, or you could play either one? Didn't matter.
I played mainly on ad court, but I could play both. It depends a little bit on my partner. Yeah. If I felt like my partner was better on the other side, I'll just make the change. I needed like maybe a match or 2, but I could play on both. It's just a little bit of adjustment on returning. That's the only thing I had a little to do, but I could play both.
How was your luck with injuries following that? You had the problems earlier with hepatitis and with your knee.
Yeah, I did have, when I had an injury, it was like major. I never had injuries, but when it happened, it was like, you broke something. So it happened just a little bit after that when I started going again, year and a half, I went to a tournament in Brazil. It was just a money tournament that I was just playing for the money within the best 16 Brazilian guys. And I was leaving Brazil to go for like 3 or 4 weeks or 3 or 4 months outside because during that time we traveled, we traveled 3 months, we don't travel like 3 weeks. So we had to leave and just basically be away. And I was playing and I felt on the court and I tried to hold myself up and I dislocated my shoulder when I hit the ground.
and that was, couldn't move my shoulder. I was on a what do you call a
Sling.
for like a month and a half without having to move. So you can imagine how tough it was to
The
recover.
atrophy, the muscles.
Yeah. So, and then you recover, and then you go on, and then keep on going, and then
Traveled all over the world, played all the majors.
yeah.
What's your favorite city? I mean, tennis was a luxury to you. You got to see the world, right?
Yes. Well, there's so many nice cities and so many good things to do all over. I like Paris a lot. Paris is, especially during that time of the French. It's nice because of the climate. The
You're talking about Paris, France, not Paris, Texas, right?
That's right. I've been to both.
I know. They actually had a very good junior college program.
They did. They were good.
There were 32 teams in Florida, but there was good teams.
They were good.
The California teams. I mean, it was I think 4-year period where I ran the junior college nationals. To digress, but the California
Brad
schools,
Gilbert played in
Foothills.
yeah.
But they didn't play in the nationals, so
exactly.
they just played within California.
Yeah.
Favorite tournament?
Favorite tournament?
As a kid, I mean, I would just think to play the majors. I mean,
Yeah. Well, I would say either Wimbledon or U.S. Open.
yeah.
Those are the two favorites for me. Yeah, Wimbledon is so different. It's just different. Everything there, from the way you walk in, you go to the locker room, and the first time I walk in, the guy has said, you have your name, they put you over there. You have locker room 1, 2, and now there's like 4 locker rooms.
Yeah.
And you go back and forth, and you see the same guys, and these guys are like old guys, that they take care of the locker room all the time. So that kind of atmosphere gets to you. It's like, Jesus, this is different, And tea, you have a ticket, they give you meal tickets, and then tea for 5 o'clock you can go have tea. That's so cool, strawberry. So different,
Well, I think about being on the Tyler Junior College courts. Now, years later, they have a brand new facility and so much nicer, but I just think you have to pinch yourself if you've been in one environment, Paris, Texas to Paris, France. You got to kind of pinch yourself going, this is great.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But you didn't have the off factor, though. You never had the off factor. You always had the inner belief system that you could be there.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. I never felt intimidated anywhere I went. I mean, I just felt that I could have gone sooner. And just life kept holding me back somehow,
Oh, I heard Lendl say this not too long ago. But when you had the success at the Orange Bowl used to be the tournament.
Yes.
It was bigger than the majors.
Yes.
Like the Junior U.S. Open, Junior Wimbledon.
Yes, it used to be, yeah. If you look at the draws, it's unbelievable.
But so, I mean, you had already made it to that international level, and as you said, you disappeared when you went to school in New Mexico.
Right, exactly.
And then all the years on the tour, so it was close to 10 years you played on the tour, 8, 9 years?
8 years, yeah. 8 full years, yeah. And then all of a sudden, I called Kent DeMars. I said, Coach, maybe I come back to be an assistant coach and do an MBA.
And you did that?
No. I didn't do it because I got a call from Dickie Dell, who was the manager of Gabriela Sabatini.
Donald Dell's brother.
Yes.
I got a text message today. I'm honored to get a text message from Christina Dell. Someone told her to bring their little kids to, have their strokes filmed and work on technique and whatever. But yeah, so tell us. Yeah, I know this story. Dickie Dell. Tell us how that went.
Yeah, he just said how I knew Gabriela because she trained with Carlos, who was a very good friend of mine, Carlos Quimaya, who was her coach.
Yeah.
So, and he said, hey, Carlos is not going to travel certain weeks. Would you like to go with Gabriela to the Australian swing and Asia? Carlos was only going to go to the Australian Open. And I said, I'm not a coach, but I said, yeah.
Why do you think Dickie Dell pulled your name out of the hat?
I have no idea. Maybe Carlos said something wrong. I have no idea.
I know. I mean, I just think about you being on those Tyler Junior College courts. Is that just the look in your eye and the command from your voice? But listeners, he's talking about Gabriela Sabatini. I mean, she's an icon
Yeah. So
from Argentina.
all of a sudden, I'm on. I was on vacation at the end of the year. It was like I was in one of the best places for me in the world, in Angra dos Reis, which is a very nice place with beaches and islands, and it's great. I even have a beach house there. It's near about 2 hours south of Rio, and and then this came up, and I said, yeah, let's go. So I got on a plane, went down to Buenos Aires, then we flew down to Australia, and that's when my coaching career started.
Wow. I have in my notes, Steven Spielberg said this about Penelope Cruz, the famous movie producer.
Mm-hmm.
Said it's very difficult for him to work with Penelope Cruz because he can't stop staring at her. I mean, so Gabriela Sabatini is so beautiful. I mean, how did you not stare at her? How did you talk to her?
Well, no, I mean,
She's very down to earth.
Yes,
very,
she is.
She was very shy.
She was very down to earth, very nice, very polite, and we already knew each other. You know, I practiced with her sometimes when she went to Brazil. Carlos would ask me to hit with her sometimes.
So athletic.
Yes, very athletic.
What
And
year? What year was that?
That's 1993.
She won the Open in '90, right? 1990.
Yeah, 1990. Yeah.
So you started at the top.
Yes. You know, and then we went there. First time was in Sydney. She went to the finals. Then Australian Open, she lost in the semis to Celis. And then we went to Tokyo. She got sick. Then we came back to Miami. And then all of a sudden, what happened was that when I was in the locker room in the Australian Open, all the guys were. I was still top 100 in doubles. So all the guys are going, "Who are you playing with?" I said, "I'm not playing." So what are you doing here then? I was like, "I'm coaching Sabatini." I wasn't really, I mean, I didn't have that badge of coach,
Yeah.
So I was kind of a little, I'm coaching her, but and then all of a sudden, a few weeks later, a couple guys started calling me and said, "Hey, come on over, travel with me, come with me," and then I'm going like, "Wow," and then that's how it developed.
And were you, when you first started coaching, were you based out of Rio de Janeiro?
I was based out of Rio, but when you're coaching on the tour, you're not based.
Yeah.
It depends on your player. If you really want to do a good job, you just basically pack your bags and you're ready to go, especially at that time. Nowadays, it's a different story. Guys can pay different, it's
Right.
a different setup.
And you were single too.
I was single completely. I mean, it was like, I didn't have to go back to anything. So basically, I would go back to change clothes, whatever, but I could go weeks, months, just traveling as long as I was okay with myself. So
Did you have an agent as far as like, I mean, Dickie Dell was, his brother, obviously Donald Dell is so
Right.
famous. Dickie Dell was an agent too,
Right.
right? So did you like have so many weeks with pros? How was that set up as far as contracts?
no, I mean, it was very organic. I in the beginning, when I just finished school, I was speaking with Advantage, the company Advantage.
Yeah.
And ProServe also a little bit. But, those guys, I won't even mention the name of the guys that were the owners of the companies. But anyway, I wasn't a top player, when I was finishing school. So it didn't make much sense to even have an agent. I even said, "What am I going to have an agent? What are you're gonna find me a contract for what?" So I need to do something before you can have an agent. And then same thing with being a coach. I mean, I wasn't a coach at the time. I was a good player. I was well known in the player field. I had very good relations with everyone. I spoke, quite a few languages. I kind of had nibbled a little bit with French, Italian, and I was always a very communicative guy. I was part of the player council, so I was known. And I think that networking kind of helped me to kind of have the doors open. And when I said, "Okay, I'm coaching," and then
As far as Spanish, as a Brazilian in South America, you travel so much. You learned Spanish at a really young age.
No,
No.
Portuguese and Spanish are very similar, but at the same time are very different. If you are Brazilian, you can better understand the Spanish guys better. It's tougher for them to understand us. But once you start being close to each other, then it's much easier because the writing is almost the same, just a few words here and there. Verb conjugation is very much similar, and then you just need to learn a few tricks here and there. But
To back up, South Carolina was known to have a degree called international business.
right.
Were you in that program?
No, I was not, because it was called the MIBS, and it's up until today I think is the best in the U.S. It's the international business program. It's number one in the
I know
U.S.
it's highly ranked.
Yeah, yeah. And I had a couple friends that were in it, but no, I was in computer science, and then I said, oh, too much math. And then when I redshirted, I went into business school, but I did marketing and systems analysis. So it was I didn't go into the program at that time, but it was I mean, that was something that I was thinking about doing my MBA on when I called Coach Tamars and said, hey, maybe I'm coming back.
Well, all those experiences are interconnected, so certainly that. Let's keep going on the coaching. I know they've been, obviously you did so many things in other areas of tennis. We opened up by going through how deep, how impressive your background is. It's not just related to what goes on the court, but also what goes on off the court. So yeah, why don't you go on with like your Davis Cup experience? How many years were you a player? Then how did you transition into being the captain?
The Davis Cup experience for me was unreal. It was a dream, which I think is probably for every player. I don't think a player wouldn't dream about not being a Davis Cup player, especially the way it was played during our time. Now it's different. I think they changed the format, and anyway. But it was a dream. When I got the call to go for the first time, we played in Chile. You can imagine. Playing Davis Cup in South America, it's an experience that you don't get anywhere else. The crowd is, there's no respect, I mean, it's not a tennis crowd.
I think you get a little bit of that when you go to watch a match in Miami.
A little bit, yeah. Yeah, but it's not even, I mean, they throw shit at you. They throw stuff at you. They will yell. Oh, Jesus, you got to be tough to play under those conditions. And we went into Chile. We played a very good team, and we beat them. Had Gildemeister, Acuna. It was a tough team to beat. And I remember we won. I got really pissed at the coach because I didn't play the doubles. I was the best doubles players at the team at that time. And it was me, Cássio Mota, Luis Mata, and Dacio Campos. And he was playing around with who was going to play with me. But it was actually, he made the right call, because there was no. And then he went with Cássio and Luis, who had played before and had more experience. And I was really pissed that I didn't play, because obviously I wanted to play.
Right.
But they went on. They won the doubles, which was key for us to win. And when we won the doubles, people were throwing everything at us. We're running into the locker room, and I mean, they cut out the lights. I mean, it's typical stuff at that time. This doesn't happen now. It doesn't happen like this. But anyway, at that time it was like this. So I had a meeting with the coach, and I said, hey, if you're gonna call me for the team, and you're gonna do this bullshit and not put me on the team and not make me practice on center court, don't call me again. And so the next tie, we're playing against Ecuador in Brazil. And Brazil had been away from the world group for 8 years. And we're playing Gomez, who was, 4 in the world. Yeah. And it was a very tough match. And then he called me up and he said, hey, you want to come? And I'm going wow, how's it going to be? So anyway, and I ended up going. And anyway, I ended up playing, and then we won. And then, won in Brazil, so it was a great experience. Then next year we're in world team, on the world group, played against Becker in Germany, playing on that fast carpet, which is Becker never lost a match on that surface. It was.
I experienced 1985. I was a guest with the Seguzo brothers. So that was 11,000 Germans in Hamburg screaming.
It's tough to play.
What do you think of today, where the Davis Cup, they're taking away the home and away?
It's a different competition for me, and it's not Davis Cup. It's a different. Call it something else.
Well, most experienced players like yourself say that it's not Davis Cup.
It's
anymore.
not Davis Cup. Davis Cup is.
It's gone.
It's gone. Yeah.
It's sad, huh?
Sad. so many years of tradition. I think it needed change, but not that change, not that drastic of a change. You know, you needed to find a way to get the better players to play more because of calendar, etc. But that is not the format.
One thing I would recommend it is just not do it every year, every 2 years, every
but
3,
then
every 4,
there's
like the World Cup soccer.
There's the power struggle, you know, ITF, you know, the other ones, ATP,
Yeah.
slams, you know, the only thing that ITF has that it's more complicated than just say have it every 2 years, every 4 years. But I think the way they did it, it just went too far. So it lost the essence of Davis Cup, because it was great when you would go in as a visitor, you know, and it was great when you're playing at home. Different feelings, different perspectives, different ways of approaching the match, different pressure, you know. You had to prepare yourself differently. I mean, we trained differently, you know, those 2 weeks before. You know, it was...
That expression, to play for something bigger than yourself. And here in the U.S., as you know, years ago, I'm going to guess that you may even played high school tennis in New Mexico, where everybody played high school tennis, which was a great thing. Now it's almost like nobody plays. I shouldn't say it that way, but the emphasis on homeschool and the top kids, that expression, the individuals become bigger than the program. So high school tennis, I mean, college coaches don't even really look that way, because the top juniors are not playing it. But that pressure of playing, I mean, that's hard to fathom, you know, playing for your country.
It is. It is. And very fortunate to have had that experience. I mean, you know, I'm glad that I was able to fulfill that dream, because it was a dream since I was a kid. To reach that level, to be there, to participate, to make a difference, to get that experience. There's, you know, playing different places. I mean, it's amazing. You know, too bad it went away.
Yeah,
the new guys they're not going to feel that anymore. They're not going to understand what that is.
During your tenure, were you a player coach on the Davis Cup? At one point, were you doing both?
No. I was already finished with my career.
And towards the end of your playing career, did you just specialize and play doubles, or did you always play both?
No, just doubles was always the thing that, you know, kind of ignited me. But I was always feeling like if I didn't play singles, it didn't make much sense. And that's the reason why I stopped playing, because it got to a point that I wasn't really ready to pay the price to be as good as I could be in singles, to train, to be dedicated. And then my last year on tour, I felt really bad, because I was just playing the doubles tournaments. I was still in the top 100, playing everything. But I felt that I wasn't really a player. I felt like I was just having fun. I was just, you know, making a little bit of money, having fun. And then once my points in singles kind of went away, I said, why am I doing this? You know, so I said, it's time to just go.
Yeah.
It's too bad. I could, you know, if it was today, I wouldn't do that, because today the money is different, and the structure is different. And in my time when I was playing, I played most of the singles guys played doubles, so everybody was playing.
Right.
Nowadays,
so different, yeah.
Nowadays there's like, you know, 50 guys that play doubles, and that's it. If you look at the majors and the bigger events, rarely you're going to see a singles guys going through from the quarters on. So it's, you know, and then, I mean, it's when I won, let's say in Geneva, one of my titles, I had to beat Gomez and Gildemeister. Gomez was number 4 in the world in single. Gildemeister was 20. So, you know, those guys were... Imagine playing those guys nowadays, you know, number 4 in singles, number 20. It's a different story.
Right.
You know, so it changed. The game changed, you know. I think, you know, it's a different story. I mean, and then I would still be playing. But at that time, it didn't make sense. So.
And was there a gap between being a player and being a captain? How many years was in between? You were pretty young when you were first captain in the Davis Cup.
Yes, it was quick. It was quick. I started being, I was like 94 or 5 years. 5 years, yeah. 5 years. In 5 years, I was captain. of the team.
And the Brazilians, do they have enough money to fund you properly as a Davis Cup, captain, going around and spending time with the players? And
Well, that's the trick. I was still on tour as a coach, and that's why it still worked. Because, no, the federation didn't have, it's not like in the U.S. You have, huge funds, and you can have a specific guy just to be the captain. And
right.
You can't survive. At that time, you couldn't survive being just a captain. I don't think even nowadays. So I coached. I was on tour. And that was one of the differences also for being the captain, because I knew everyone. I knew how to play everyone. I knew all the coaches. I knew all the players. I knew the routines of our players because we're traveling. I know the guy I coached was the number 2 Brazilian guy or number 1 Brazilian guy at the time. So, and then Guga comes up, and then we're very close. We're traveling the same tournaments. We're always very close to each other. So we knew how to execute. We knew how to play everyone. We knew the conditions, and then that made me a special person to be in there. I made a difference because of that, and that was the reason why the former captain was kind of placed out, because he couldn't be in that position. He couldn't be traveling. He didn't know what to do.
So you were definitely an insider.
Exactly. So it was
Guga. For our young listeners, go to YouTube.
Yeah.
He's the guy who won the French Open, drew a hard on the court and laid down.
Yeah.
I remember one time being in the U.S. Open, and Guga was being interviewed, and his personality, he told the journalist, "Hey, can I try to just keep this tennis ball going like a soccer ball on his foot during the entire interview?" and sure enough, he did. But tell us a story about his brother. I think, his younger brother, who's always, bedridden, and I know he passed away years ago, but
Yes.
and he dedicated every trophy to him, and I think that was something that all juniors should learn, that he was having so much fun playing tennis, and he goes, "I always just think about my brother. I'm out here running after tennis balls." Why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Guga was very special. His family. His dad died when he was very young.
8 or 9 years old, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So his mom has to raise him, his brother, and his young brother who had, he had a disability. So
Right.
it was tough. I know the family quite well. Know his mom and his brothers, and Guilherme was the young one. So, and Guga he's a very special individual. I mean, he's a guy that
Everybody loves that guy, huh?
yeah, it's tough not to love the guy. The guy is very humble, but has a very good perspective on things. Okay, Guga wins the French Open. Okay, out of nowhere. The next year, he is walking around. He goes in the players' restaurant. He's walking barefooted. So, we had a session. He was training with my player, with Fernando, and then let's go eat lunch. And then he's walking into the players' lounge barefoot, and people are going like, "What the heck? What is he doing?" That's the way he is. He walks barefooted. So that's the type of guy he is. And then fierce competitor.
Great mover. Great, very supple, very athletic.
And he but with a very sense of down to earth life, but hard worker. Jesus, on our routines on Davis Cup, we trained quite hard on Davis Cup. We made a point when we played in Brazil. We made a point of playing on clay in the hottest condition as possible. Nobody could beat us because we would train very hard. 2 weeks before we were there, the whole team. I would bring juniors. I would bring 2 extra guys to practice with us. And the leaders were the number 1 and the number 2 guys. They would be on the court all the time. Guga sometimes I have to say, "Hey, stop! You've hit 35 lines." And no, a few more. Let's go. And I'm going like, "Oh shit, let's go!" So one week, one tie before we played was the Czech Republic or Slovakia. We played Slovakia. We had a very good team, Herbati and Kuchera. He played the finals against Sampras in Miami on a Sunday, and he flies in on overnight. And he arrives at the airport, and I say, hey, he calls me on my phone and say, hey, yeah, coming over. Say, hey, go to the hotel, relax. I said, no, get the court ready, man. I'm going to practice. I go, no, man, relax. We're going to win this weekend. I gotta get on the court. So the guy flies overnight after playing 5 sets with Sampras the night before. He goes on the court and stays there. I mean, it's like out of. I mean, I've never seen that. I mean, it's the dedication, the way of doing things was absurd, and plus perfection. You know, and he had a guy, Larry Passos was his coach from
Forever, yeah.
forever. Larry was like his second dad, you know, and Larry was by his side all the time. Larry was also with me half of the time on Davis Cup, but it was a guy that always knew how to push him, you know, and knew how to the right buttons to get him going, which it was kind of, you know, they were made for each other, yes, you know.
Yeah, it's very moving. It's on YouTube. The Hall of Fame speech. Larry is there, and talk about humble. I think of Rod Laver. I think of Nadal. It's amazing how many champions are. Unlike, say, John McEnroe or Jimmy Connors,
I don't know one guy that doesn't like Uga on the tour.
Yeah, no,
I don't know
he's
anybody.
revered. Yeah.
I don't even guys that didn't play with him. They like him. I mean, and if you get to meet him, you understand why. Good personality.
Yeah.
So.
Well, how about a different personality? Your coach Rios. I mean, he was number one in the world. Tell us about his career. It was very short, but completely different personality.
Completely different. Marcelo was, also, like I said, very a perfectionist in terms of training, in terms of working hard, in terms of doing. I'd never had everybody say, oh, you had a hard time working with Marcelo. No, zero. Very professional. Marcelo was like, you know, I would train him as hard as I wanted. I would do the routines as much as I wanted. I would say, let's do this, and he was up to do it. It was not an issue for him. The guy would, you don't get to be number one being lazy or being
right.
whatever. So, I mean, the guy was, he respected me, so I didn't have an issue with him in terms of doing this or that. His issue was more of outside. He didn't have many friends, a lot of on his own. I even tried to help him a little bit, and I suggested him. In Brazil, what I did with every one of my players, I always felt that first, I needed to have I also managed most of my players. I also managed their careers. So one of the things I didn't manage Marcelo anyway, but because he already was managed by ING.
Yeah.
But most of the players that I managed, I always felt that I had to make them have more value in the market where we were, especially in Brazil. Because, you know, so if you're in Brazil, I knew how to handle quite well. So I always organized to have a press liaison or a press company behind my players to make sure that when they had a good result, it was well exposed. And also when we had to position themselves differently outside of tennis because of tennis. So we can get a better contract on, you know, whatever, a bracket deal or a clothing deal or outside. So in that sense, having a press liaison or someone to do like that works well because it doesn't allow you to be in such a difficult situation. It kind of eases the way. Guga and my other guy, Fernando, they always had it. I think we were the first guys that did it on tour because I don't remember anybody doing it before. And then now, you know, Benito did, you know, Djokovic and Benito Perez Barbadillo, who worked for the ATP. He was, you know, Nadal's press. He did Djokovic and Nadal in the beginning. So, I mean, he was like more or less in that same type of idea years later. But I actually introduced that to Marcelo. I said, Marcelo, let me help you with this because this is someone that can kind of ease that tension in between the press and you. And it took him 2 seconds. I don't give a shit about it. He says, I don't give a shit about it. Don't worry about it. So that's the way he was. I mean, he would walk on an interview and he would just say whatever he had on his mind. At the Australian Open one year, everybody was talking The Williams were talking about, oh, we can play with the man, this and that. And there was a lot of stuff going on, and none of the guys were stepping out. And I was going, Jesus, man, at one of these times, he's going to say something. So we're there playing, and he wins the first round, and nobody asks anything. He wins the second round. I'm just saying, the first guy that asks him the question is going to go. And then, he gets to the quarterfinals, and someone asked him the question, and he said, hey, come on, let's start the bullshit. Just call Karsten Brasch and let Karsten Brasch answer you guys the question. Stop talking about, they can beat, the man. And you know the story about the Karsten Brasch, the German guy who was top 200 years earlier when they started this thing way, way, way back then. And they played against, so I'll play the guy that's number 200. It was Karsten. Karsten is a German guy, lefty, who drinks and smokes all the time. He's very famous for smoking cigarettes on the court, drinking beer all the time. Very cool guy. And he played them like a set each, and he beat like 6-1, 6-1, both of them. So Marcelo just, that was the type of thing that he would do. He wouldn't be quiet whenever he had to say something. So, no, he wasn't difficult to work with. It's too bad that, he had a lot of injuries, a little bit here and there.
Yeah, that was my next question, because his career was cut short.
Yeah, just like Guga. Guga had, for me, I never saw a person with a pain, how do you say, when you can tolerate pain a lot. I never seen someone tolerate pain as much as he did. He was the guy that could tolerate pain as much. And I think that's probably why he got his hip hurt, because he could play on the pain. I mean, I
played injured for a while.
Yeah, he would just play. He would just push, and he would be. I mean, that guy was unbelievable. He would play 5 sets one day. He'd play doubles the next day. He played 5 sets the other day on Davis Cup, and he would be like dead, and he'd just like get up, and you'd be the first guy. Like, I mean, some of the stories, if I would tell you, is unbelievable. So
he had the body where it looked like he could run all day.
Yeah, unfortunately, in Guga's case, the body cut his career short. He would have done a lot more had he not been, with his hip. And Marcelo is the same thing. Marcelo had, one issue with his ankle, issue with his back. I mean, but his way of controlling the ball, I will tell you.
This is Rios.
Rios, yeah. He had a ball impact that I've never seen before. It's unbelievable. It was very smart. I would tell him something, because when you're coaching these guys, on the top, you're not really telling. I mean, you're not coaching them how to play tennis. You have to be, you have to coach him how to approach the opponent. What is, little details, and they're very fast on seeing it.
I think Joe Public doesn't really get that, and so. Murray starts to work with Lendl. It's not like he's going to start teaching him the ready position.
Right, exactly. It's the final details. So you're going to tell the guy this, and the things I think I did well with Marcelo is that exactly that. I said, hey, Marcelo, this and that, and he goes, really? And he would adjust in 2 seconds. And one day we arrived, the first tournament, we arrived in Washington to play, and I said, hey, I'm looking at your stat. You know how many aces you hit in the last, month and a half, 2 months? And it was very little. And he used to hit a lot of aces. And I go, and he said, yeah, well, my serve is wrong. No, you're obvious. I can tell. I mean, I know exactly where you're going to serve, Marcelo. If I know, the other guy's coach also knows, man. So are you serious? Yeah, you're being too obvious. You serve here that time. You serve here on this one. In one match, it starts ace. He started. So it's basically, just clicking a little thing. Hey, your forehand. You're doing just little. You came from indoors. You're not indoors. Your swing is this. And really, boom. He adjusts in 1 second. So those guys.
Yeah. So you're really more of a mentor, confidant than a technician.
Yes.
It's not like you're.
Yes. I mean, it's just a little bit of a details, And then motivation. I think the thing for him, if he didn't feel the ball on a racket, that kind of turned him off. because he always felt that he had to feel the ball perfectly on his racket. He was so perfectionist. You know, he strung 6 rackets every day. New, you know, just like Sampras would do. You know, 6 rackets, new rackets. Next day, cut them up, 6 rackets, new rackets. Even if you don't use it, every match you go walk on the court. They have to be perfectly with this, like that. So those.
And then certainly with the entourage, the more people involved, the more management required. So you got to help. It's not just the player; you're dealing with the whole team.
Nowadays, Steve, you know, about the tournament in Brazil, I have a couple coaches that it's funny for me. The managers are calling from Europe to sign up for practice court. I go, what? This is ridiculous, man. There's some now the tour nowadays is it's different.
How about the player Fernando Melgini? This is interesting that he had a 2-hander. You changed him to 1-hander. You worked with him for a long time too.
Yeah.
Tell us a little about
Fernando
that story.
Fernando's a great story because I was working with Nichols Pereira at the time, and
He's on the tennis channel now.
yes,
Yeah.
Nico is in the tennis.
Seems like a great personality.
Nico's a great guy. Nico is like a brother. So, but I always liked at that time. I always liked to work with 2 players. I felt that, you know, because of scheduling, because of sharing, a lot of times, you know, is economically also it's better to have 2 guys. But anyway, so Nico and I said, hey, maybe Fernando could be. So we bring him to Mexico City, the tournament in Mexico, the ATP, which is now in Acapulco. And it was our first tournament together with Fernando. And then Fernando, I knew him from Brazil. I had played against Fernando because he's a few years younger than me. But, you know, and I hated playing him because he was like a rabbit on the court. He run every ball down, very steady, good forehand, and basically a lot of heart. So we get to Mexico, and same thing. I said, hey, I'm going to just tweak a few things here and there on you. And, you know, as a lefty, I said, lefties can be a pain in the butt if you know how to play as a lefty. So I said, I'm gonna impose all the lefties that I played against. I'm gonna let you be the pain that they've caused to me. So, and then I started saying, hey, use this serve a little bit more. Do this more. Do this and that. And then he was loving it, and he would do it, you know, out of the bat. So, right there, first tournament that we're together. First time he makes the finals of a tour event. He loses to Mooster in the finals. 7-6, 7-6, or 7-6, 7-5, something like that. Very tight match. Almost wins the tournament. So we clicked, and then all of a sudden, you know, we started working, and it was a guy that had so much heart.
From Argentina, right?
No, this is a great thing for you to bring because he was born in Argentina, but he came to Brazil when he was 3 years old, and he's adopted, not he's adopted, he's chose to be Brazilian. And that was something that he carried along the middle of his career, which was tough for him to deal with. Very tough, because he was considered Argentinian, but not really an Argentinian. And he was considered Brazilian, but not really a Brazilian.
Wow.
Yeah, it was tough for him. It was tough to deal with it, you know, especially when you got to be, you know, Davis Cup, in Olympics, I can tell you some stories.
Well, you guys are very close. What's he do now?
He's ESPN commentator in Brazil.
Wow.
Yeah, and he does...
All sports or just tennis?
Just tennis. And he does clinics all weekend long. Lots of tennis clinics all over Brazil. He's very much into also doing a mentorship for younger kids. He has a system which is quite nice. He does it online with like 50 kids per semester. And he brings me on the show with him to talk about some things, brings former players, and all these kids can have access to this information with him. So it's quite nice. No.
It's usually a 1-hander going to do a 2-hander. Could you just go back on that a little bit more? 2-hander to 1.
Well, okay, so we start going. He wins his first title in Båstad in Sweden,
yeah,
winning, you know, unbelievable tournament on clay. Then he wins the Pinehurst tournament, which was the U.S. clay courts, which is now Houston. So he second title. Then he wins Prague By the way, on clay courts he beats Villander in the finals. On Bostad he beats Costa, he beats Norman, he beats Christian Ruud's father. Yeah. So anyway, in Prague he beats Kafelnikov, he beats Safin. So he's like, his ranking is the range of 50. Well, not it's 50 to 70 something. But just because he wins these tournaments, because his actual ranking for me was like 80 to 90, 80 to 100, because his backhand was a little flaw. The better players, when they found it, it was a hole. So it got to a point, and this is a true story. We get to the end of the year, and he's 80, and Guga is coming up, and Guga is also around 80. And they're playing the semis of a challenger in Brazil. Last time of the year, we have played in Europe all the end of the year. There's a challenge. The promoter makes a challenge in Brazil in Campinas, and we go. And they're playing. They come in the same side of the draw. They play in the semis. Whoever wins that match will be the number one Brazilian player for the end of the year. So it's like, pride.
Big deal.
Yeah, big deal. Exactly. So they start playing, and big match, center court, full TV, all of the good stuff, and he loses 6-3 in the third. So I go back in the locker room with him, and he's like bummed out, he's really down. I lost to this. I said, this young kid is good. We know how it is. And I was waiting for a moment to approach him to make this change. Because I've been trying everything that I could to make this backhand better, and I said, "There's not more that I can do. I can't do anymore. I've tried everything, I've tried everything, but let's, early get over here, change a little bit here and there without major change." I said, "No, there's no way I can make it any better." I try to hide it, tactically. I say, "Hey, run around, do this, get the first ball here." I mean, just everything. I said, "There's no way," and I knew that if I didn't change that, there was no chance for him to go into the top 50. So when that happened, I said, "Hey, you have 2 weeks of vacation up," because it was at the end of the year. I said, "We start training preseason in 2 weeks. And in 2 weeks, I'm going to change your backhand. Because if you want to beat this kid, we need to change it." I didn't tell him what I was going to do. I said, "We're going to change it." And he said, "Whatever, make the plan, I'm doing it." Okay.
Wow. It's great for people to hear that.
And then I said, "Okay, we meet in 2 weeks. Go to the beach, go with your girlfriend, disappear. I'll see you in 2 weeks." And that was it. And then we changed it. And then you know what I did it? In 1 month, he didn't hit one live ball. For 1 month. Because we had a break before Australia. And I hit him. He would start every session on the wall. Every session. You can imagine this. On the wall, dead ball. We didn't have green dot balls at that time.
Right.
So I had all these old balls that I opened the cans before to make them, mushy. And he was like 15 minutes backhand on the wall, every beginning of practice, end of practice, twice a day. And then by the time we got to Australia, a month and a half later, he won his first match in Australian Open.
So no live ball, so you just fed balls to him.
Fed balls to him all the time. Or I would hit with him, but I wouldn't put him to, like, he didn't play a match.
Yeah.
He didn't play a match. I'll lie. He played 2 matches before we went to Australia. And I said, "That's it." And then he beat Prinosil, 8-6 in the fifth. to get his first, he never won the first round in Australia. Hard courts was tough for him. So I changed it from a two-handed to a one-handed. He didn't even know what I was going to do. He said, "I had no idea." I mean, he said he was going to change it, but yeah, we're going to do it one-handed, man.
Sounds like he had the right attitude as far as coachability.
Yeah, he was very coachable, very coachable. I mean, as much as I think it was merit for me, but I think it's merit for him to be accepted, to be open for it, and to be okay. Let's do it, and that's it.
Those are two powerful points. One, Rios. I heard someone say that about Roger Federer. Is that talent is when you show somebody one time and they can just do it. Yeah. But then also too, it is a talent to be so coachable.
Exactly.
Where you say, "Okay, coach, whatever you say."
That's what his dad actually said. And your talent is not being a great ball striker, whatever. Your talent is being a kid that you work hard and you listen. That's his dad.
That's so powerful.
Yeah.
And then what was his best result?
Semis of the French.
Wow.
Year and a half later, after this change, he started having the best results of his career. He went to semis of the French exactly 2 years later, 2 Frenches later. So, yeah, because he could start passing, returning better. He didn't have to run around so much. I mean, it just opened up another tactical option that he couldn't have because of the other backhand. So,
how about your game? What was if you had a hole in your game, what would you say it would have been? Go back to Mark Wilder. That guy was just, he was so good physically, so good mentally.
yeah.
And, he was, you just think of that baseline player, counter-attacker. But you had an all-court game. I mean, you had the one-hander.
Yeah, I would say my patience. I wasn't as patient as I could be. Whenever I was calm and patient, I could be, hanging with anyone.
I remember I watched you play so much when you were younger. That makes sense because you could hit every shot.
Yeah, I felt like that. Yeah, exactly. I could do whatever I wanted to do. I want to stay here, there, whatever. Credit to my brother, who kept on telling the coach. My brother showed me a letter from this coach. Can you believe this? Years later, no, not years later.
Back when you were early teens.
He showed me the letter. See, this is the letter the guy, Ayrton, wrote a letter to our dad, to our mom and dad, saying that he's a great player, but it's tough for him because he wants to do these things. He wants to be flashy. And I go, I'm glad you kept on. My brother saying, no, let him be like that. So yeah, I felt like I could hit every shot. In movement. Maybe I could move better too. I think I could. I was always powerful. I felt like I could play in type of power.
Oh no, the ball coming off your racket,
Yeah.
boom.
Yeah.
When I first met you, I had come from the Vic Braden Tennis College, where there's such an influence on science, and there's upon impact, there's spin, speed, trajectory, but there's also sound.
Yeah.
It's like he has to be doing something right. There are intangibles to it. I mean, it's just like this is an attitude. He's not going to push. He's going to hit out.
Yeah.
How about your brother? What was his game style?
Yeah, he was aggressive too. Yeah, he would have a good serve, a good forehand. He would like to come in too.
Did he play after going to Mexico? Did he play college tennis in the States?
No, my brother went into the academic thing. He's a very well-known architect worldwide. He's an
Here in the
urbanist.
States or Argentina or Brazil?
He lives in Europe. He's an urbanist. Works for the UN. He has worked for the UN, not now anymore, but he's known worldwide for being an urbanist. So he takes care of cities, he planning and all this stuff.
Wow.
Yeah. So
He was your architect too.
yeah,
Really?
that's true. That's true.
Talk to us about a little bit about tennis politics, serving with the ATP Council, and if you were the commissioner for the day, that's a question people often ask. Obviously there's a big upside to tennis, but if commissioner of the day, what are some things that you look back upon that could be done better in tennis today?
Well, I had the experience of being on a player council, and then the experience of being on the player on the board of the ATP. So those two things that similar but at the same time antagonic.
Say that again.
They're similar but they're different at the same time, because when you have a player culture, you have your view much centered into yourself, and then when you come out of that situation, you go to the next one. You view from the outside and you see some of the things that you could do better, and maybe what you're thinking as a player doesn't work as a whole for the sport. So,
That's well put.
yeah, and then when you're there representing the guys, a lot of times you may have to take decisions that, as a player, you don't understand why you have to go that route. But when you take off the player hat and you start having a little bit more vision on the world and what's the business of it, you understand that you can't go the route of what the player thinks. And then I think more and more, the player culture nowadays is much more centered player-wise. And, guys are not really interacting with other guys too much. They're on to their own groups. And they don't get exposed to different thoughts, to different ideas, to different views. And then they just self-centered too much. So there's a lot of friction, I think. When I was there was a lot of friction. And one of the things that kind of took me away a little bit was some of the decisions were made more on politics than on business sense, on what was best for the game, let's say. And that turned me off a little bit.
Certainly I'm connected to the grassroots level, training tennis teachers, training tennis players. We have the alphabet soup, from, how do they say it? From 50,000 feet away, it seems like it's pretty complicated. With the ATP, the WTA, you just go on and on.
There's a lot of, it's fragmented, and there is a lot of power. There's a lot of power plays, which is sometimes is not the best for the game.
And then the players, say for example, the ITF, that's not connected with the pensions, correct? So someone like yourself who played for 8 years, all that money from the majors doesn't help the players in their retirement, correct?
Well, the pension is funded by the ATP and the tournaments on the ATP, and now I don't know if the Grand Slams are starting have started to contribute.
Kick into that, yeah.
So, but the ITF is completely disconnected to that. Completely. There's no gel. Different vision, different purposes.
I think a lot of times you hear my son, one time I asked him, he was at the future level and he won singles and doubles. And as a father, I said, well, what was the check? And he said 1,800. And I said, well, what did you win for playing doubles? And he looked at me and said, I wish you didn't ask me that because it was combined. That's what he had won for winning both. But so at the entry level, but then at the retirement level, there's problems with finances, correct? In other words, the pension, all that money from the majors, it doesn't go in. I've always understood it doesn't go back into the pension. It's what the WTA and the ATP tournaments produce, not the majors, where there's the major money.
Yeah, exactly. There is so much money being made by the slams.
Yeah.
And that is one of the biggest issues for the players. I was involved in that negotiation a lot when I was on the board, quite a few years back. And most of the guys that are playing nowadays have no idea of this, and at the end, what happened, I'll cut the story short, but I mean, we've made a player meeting. Everybody said, okay, you guys are authorized to negotiate with the slams to get a better cut of the prize money. Everybody signs a letter. Most of the guys, we set a quota of number of guys that had to sign within the top 100 for us to be meaningful. And everybody signed. We got our quota. We got to the French. We, approached the slams and said, "Hey, we would like to do this, and that. This would like to propose different, share of prize money, because you guys contribute 15% of total revenue, which is absurd." And okay, the next letter that we needed players to sign was, guys, you're authorizing us to decide that in the next year we may boycott one of the slams. So most of the guys signed it. This was in French.
What year was that?
2000 maybe?
Yeah.
2001?
Yeah.
Something like that. By the time we got to Wimbledon, I had guys coming back who had signed the letter to me and said, "Hey, can you give me the letter back?"
And why is that?
Agents, federations, sponsors. Hey, you guys can't do this. So a lot of guys backed out. So
It's like
years later, Federer, Nadal, and I think Djokovic they embraced and they approached a different way, and I think they got they got a different discussion going on, but I don't think it's there yet.
In '73, the players boycotted. Nicky Pilic, former Yugoslavia, he didn't play Davis Cup, so at Wimbledon they said, you don't play Davis
Right.
Cup, you can't play Wimbledon. And then there was a few players I know, Connors, Metrovelli, there's a few players that played, but it was
Right.
close to 100% of the top
Right.
players didn't play.
Yeah. So, I think tennis, from what I see, from the experiences I have, I've been running events also, challengers, and I'm involved in Rio Open, and I think there's a lot of potential. In Rio, we had the best tournament of our history. So, the edition now, 2023, sold out, great crowds, everything was great. I mean, just can't complain. So.
And with Rio, how involved were you with the Olympics? I know that you're obviously carrying the torch and coaching. How has that been for the country? It's always interesting afterwards, like, hey, what happened in Montreal? And, they spent all this money. What happened in this city and that city? And
Well, first Olympics I went as a player in Seoul, and for me, again, unbelievable experience of being with the other athletes. Also a dream come true. And then in Sydney, I go as a coach. So I take Guga, I take Jaime Oncins, and I take the girls, the two Brazilian girls. Different perspective also because I was involved in. There was a lot of issues for Guga to go because he had a different sponsor clothing-wise as a committee. He almost didn't go. I mean, the day we're going to board the plane, he is saying to me, "I'm not boarding the plane."
that's kind of like Michael Jordan with Reebok.
Yeah. So
Nike and Reebok, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, in the end, we found a way for him to go. He went, and by the time we get to Australia, president of a committee of a Olympic committee is over there to greet him. Imagine, he's number one in the world at that time. So he's like, doesn't want to get a picture with the guy. So then, years later, Brazil makes the bid, gets the Olympics, and we're hosting the Olympics. And then you have to say, wow, great, we're going to have great infrastructure. We're going to have, a center. And then I start thinking about what happened to the centers in Athens, and Barcelona. And you start thinking, Jesus, we better work things better than they did, Seoul, the Seoul one, they run a tournament there, so it's still going on. But I mean, a lot of the places, you have to spend a lot of money, do all that, and then all of a sudden you don't use it. Anyway, it was a big boom. Thomas Bellucci got to the quarter, so Brazilian guys, so it was great. We had a hope for the Brazilian boys in terms of the doubles, Melo and Bruno Soares. Melo trained with me in my academy when he was 18, 19, was number one in the world.
Is he really 6'8"?
Yeah, he's 202 in meters. It's got to be 6'8". I don't know what it is, but it's 202.
Actually, a student of ours, Raven Klaassen, played some with him, South African.
Oh yeah, right. That's right.
They won
Klaassen,
a couple. They won a couple titles.
Yes. I remember
great
him.
guy.
He went to Brazil to play a few times. Yeah, South Africa.
Yeah.
So yeah, Marcelo trained in my academy in Brazil from 19 to 20, 21. 21. So they had almost a chance. So, like him and Bruno were like top 10. We thought maybe they would get a medal, but no.
And you coached Bruno as a kid too?
Bruno came to train with me a few times, but not full time. No.
He's a great story too.
Yes, he is. The guy that worked with him worked for me. The coach that worked with him for a long time in the beginning, not now.
At your academy.
Yeah, exactly. My academy.
So the Olympics, it's obviously different. I mean, Davis Cup is so big, but then you go and it's all the sports. That must have been even bigger than Davis Cup.
Oh yeah.
I mean, like more overwhelming to go into the stadium as a player than as a coach. The opening ceremony and all that.
Yeah, the opening ceremony is unreal. It's unreal.
Yeah.
It's you can imagine that the whole world is watching over there. And
it's tough to watch the news. There's so much bad news, but when you watch the positives from sports, it's amazing.
And when the pre-entry on the Olympic Stadium is really cool because everybody's lined up outside, and then you mingle around to talk to because of us being tennis players, we know a lot of people, so it was really funny for us because we could kind of walk around and talk to the guys that were going, on the other countries, and I think it's a special feeling.
Yeah.
It's a special feeling that it's unique. Going back to the Olympics, and Meligeni, he was born in Argentina, 3 years old, comes to Brazil. So, Olympics in Atlanta, he's playing for Brazil.
96 probably, right?
Yeah, 96, exactly. So, he starts winning matches. We were in Europe, and I said, well, Fernando, if you lose in the first week, come back to Europe. We're going to, play the swing here until it was like some clay court tournaments to play. So I stayed in Europe. I wasn't expecting him to go too far. Anyway, he starts winning. He beats Philippoussis. He beats He goes to the semis. So now he's playing for a medal. Can you imagine? And then, like I said, that is when he disappears of being the Argentinian that is Brazilian, or the Brazilian that is Argentinian, to being a Brazilian. That's when he solidifies his way of being Brazilian, because everybody's saying this guy is more Brazilian than any Brazilian, because he's like, the way he played, he threw himself on a court. He was like running all over the place. He would dive. I would tell him, hey, the freaking court is not a pool. Quit driving. So he would dive on balls. I can't do it. It's natural. I just go and dive. I said, well, okay, I understand that. But anyway, when he gets to the semis, the whole of Brazil is going, this guy is going to win a medal.
That's very common. He's more Brazilian than any Brazilian.
Yeah. So
Kind of love that.
yeah, and then he plays Bruguera, and he's playing Bruguera in the semis. It's 6-5 for him, set point. Misses the first serve. No, misses the first serve. And then he's about to hit the second serve, and a Brazilian yells out, he's going to miss it. Kind of throws him off. He hits the serve, double faults. And we're going like, it's one of those guys that never, knows tennis. He's thinking about the other guy's going to miss. Wait till he hits the serve in. But then, he kind of loses his rhythm, loses the tiebreaker, loses the second set. So, okay. Next day, he's still got a chance to go for the bronze because he was playing for
Medal, yeah.
for
be in the gold medal match.
gold medal match. And then we'll play Agassi in the finals. So the next match, so the third and fourth is against Leander Paes, who had a horrible game for him because Leander, coming in all the time, fast court. And
Short, compact.
Yeah, exactly. And going, geez, it's going to be a nightmare. And Leander ended up winning. So anyway, he came so close of winning a medal. But that was the tournament. That Olympic, he turned Brazilian right there, 100%.
Yeah.
So that's
In the selection process, does it carry the torch? That had to be an honor.
That was a huge honor. I was really happy that happened. And when the Olympic Committee gave me a call and said, hey, we're calling former Olympians to, have the honor to carry the torch. And I go like, Jesus, man, God, that's unbelievable. So I said, sign me up. I have it with me. It's my house. It's here.
Wow.
Yeah, I have it.
Goes where you go. That's
Yes. I mean, that's something that my kids. I don't even know if they know the value or not, but they see it, and I mean, it was huge. I mean, imagine walking. You see that on TV. Now,
Right.
you never think you're going to be part of that. I mean, all of a sudden, I'm carrying the torch. Man.
At that time, there's just one person in the world who's carrying it.
Exactly. So I felt, when they reached out and they said, "Hey, would you like to do it?" I said, "Are you kidding me?" Anybody refuse that? Yeah, so I carried the torch, man. It's unique. So,
With academy, you ran your own academy. Just amazing journey in tennis, amazing life in tennis. What advice comes to your mind? I mean, obviously, this would be a podcast in itself for tennis parents. I mean, you have a lifetime in tennis. I mean, if you were to say, okay, mom and dad.
To run an academy?
No, to bring up their own kid.
Okay. Well, bring up first of all, you need to find the passion For me, passion it's got to be very, very part of it. The passion has to be there. If the passion is not there, it's a journey that's going to end quick. Because, tennis is a journey. Look at my life. Look at the life of my family. So, I think of my parents when I was playing, when they were taking me on the weekends to play tennis, what they could be doing differently. So it's a journey. So it has to be passion. You have to give up some things to get other things. And then once you embrace it, you look, how can I make this journey the best as possible? Now let's get into the nitty-gritty of let me give my kid the best possibility to be successful at this, whatever it is. Being the best high school kid, the best in the state, best in the house. I wasn't the best in the house for a while. I mean, I had my I couldn't beat my brother for a while. I couldn't beat my mom. I couldn't.
How old are you when you could beat your mom?
I was only able to beat my mom at 12.
12. Wow.
And I was good. But I found out because
that's perspective.
Yeah, because when I found out that on the drop shot, I said, okay, I got her. I drop shot her all the time, so there's no more match. So that was it. And then I said, and then my brother took a little while, but then by 14 to 15, he started saying, okay, you're starting to be better than me.
A term we don't use too often in tennis anymore. That you proved that you had the killer instinct. If you're going to drop shot your mom.
Yes.
There's so many stories like that. I always tell juniors, Sampras was number one in the world for 6 years, but there was more than 6 years where he wasn't number one in his family because Stella was older and better.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So like I'm saying, it's a journey. It's, and it has to have passion for you to be there. So once you get that kind of say, okay, then you start thinking about, coaches. Like, look at the coach that I had. Luck of the draw or not. That, my parents were.
Well, he had, as you said, he had the passion. He loved it.
Yeah. And, they were intelligent enough to say, hey, I was, and this is something that I say to some parents, I was probably the best player everywhere I trained. Pretty much.
No, TJC for sure. The one thing about TJC, going back to that, is that today with the alphabet soup again, the UTR, the WTN, and all the rankings and ratings. What an amazing thing! I'm saying it a second time for you to, it's like you stepped away from the international scene and went to play high school tennis in Mexico. I mean,
yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah, that's right. So. Like I said, I probably played everywhere I trained. Not even saying there, but before, when I was young, I never felt that I didn't get better because I didn't have guys that were better than me. Because I always had good coaches. And I think that was the key for me, because my coaches were good enough that even me being 13 and being able to beat the guys that were 18 or 17 or older guys, or, whatever, they found a way for me to grow, to keep developing. So, and I see a lot of people associating just, you have to play with someone better to get better. Sure, okay, I understand that point, and at one point it makes a difference. You have to, you also have to be pushed. But if you have someone that knows how to direct and how to make you get better, it's not necessary. I even say that Guga came from Florianopolis. It's like coming from Wyoming in terms of tennis.
Wow.
He would play with kids that are 18 years old. There were very little people to play around with, So,
wow, that's an amazing story.
So, but he had a coach that was passionate, that would work him hard, that would travel with him, that would be, and that made the thing work. So
you're definitely a worldly person. That you definitely know that Wyoming's not a hot spot of tennis. land. It's not where you go to learn to surf either. I know Guga. I heard him say that he was the worst surfer in the world. Is that true?
Well,
Yvonne's a surfer.
He says he's not. If you look, he has some clips on YouTube at some big waves actually, but No, I mean he's okay. I mean, he can stand up and do a few cuts.
Yeah.
So.
But yeah, the parents, I mean, just this morning, you know, it's interesting. I spoke to Roger Fulmer. I mean, the word honor, I mean, what an honor to carry the Olympic torch, but I was honored that he came to spend some time at one of our tennis schools. And you know, I know he's at least won one, maybe more than one national championship. And he was talking about, you know, recruiting players. And he goes, I just want people to love the game. Just want people to love the game. And, you know, I think back when you were, and again, I'm blown away by the fact that you were 16. I thought it was really more, and that's where it's great to talk to you, that the fact that you spoke English fluently. But I just remember you speaking English so well. But the other guys came in, and you were younger, but you were like their big brother.
Yes.
You were like the big brother. And you know, those few weeks where I ran practice, I mean, I was just giving out drills. I wasn't doing any coaching. But you definitely were hanging around the court, so. I mean,
right.
You were there, hitting
Yes.
serves, practicing before practice, after practice, and
I did, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
it was just extra, extra, extra. But all you guys did, you know, hungry dog hunts best. I mean, it was a very, very good environment.
Yeah.
With working with Chris Evert, that history repeats itself. Now you're doing the same thing for your family. I mean, your kids are here, new country, new language,
Yeah.
and the goal is to go on and have a university experience.
Yeah. I wanted to provide them, my kids, the same opportunity that I had. And when they embarked on the you know, tennis, in the beginning, I always felt, even my wife was saying, you don't want the kids to play tennis. And I said, no, I would love them to play tennis. And so why do you always try to go somewhere else? It's because I don't want to force them to play tennis. I said, but they want to play. I said, okay, but I just want to make sure that I'm not forcing them to play, because it's easy for me to just jump on the wagon and say, let's go, you know. And then at one point I said, well, I mean, they want to play. So I said, okay, so they want to play? All right, let's do it. So I, you know, had a coach take care of them, you know, knowing how to do the, you know, I had a coach that was very good with the young ones. And anyway, initiate them in the right way, etc. And then if I saw them that they were, you know, wanting to do it, and then it got to a point in Brazil that was, okay, we're going to start traveling. And I'm going like, okay, we're going to, you know, get into competitive tennis. Luca was 10, 9 to 10. Julia was like, Julia was at 10 and he was 8. So I said, geez, here we go. So I'm thinking, you know, okay, we're going to start traveling. And in Brazil, you don't have a lot of tournaments. It's not like here, you can just basically drive 20 minutes and you play whenever
Right.
tournaments you want. I mean, basically, I'm starting to get on the plane and flying 2 hours to play a match, 2 matches. There's no back draw. Spending a whole week, hotel, staying, you know, I mean, I'm doing what I was doing. But with them, okay, I love it. I mean, it's no big deal. I mean, you know, I would love to do that. But then I say, oh, but if we're going to do this right, I mean, this is not the, you know, the best environment to do it, you know. Then all of a sudden I'm saying, we're playing the same kids, you know, nationally. So I'm leaving from Rio to go to São Paulo to play the same kids, to go to Brasilia, to go to Porto Alegre. You know, it's like I'm flying to Austin, or I'm flying to, you know, Memphis, I'm flying to Atlanta, and I'm playing the same kids. Because, you know, it's not like the US, you have, you know.
Right.
So I said, well, let me give him the opportunity to do this. So that's how I came over to say, let's go to the US. And then I came over to Everett and talked to Joanne and to Chris, and they started here. I still have my stuff in Brazil, so first year was here. I went to Brazil 10 times in 1 year. So
I was going to ask you, do you spend like 12 months of the year here now?
no, now I'm full-time here. Yeah, now I'm full-time. But in the beginning, it was like, you know, I had my own academy back home. I had, you know, running events, commentating on TV. I mean, it's
But you're not doing that now, though.
No, I'm just involved on the Rio Open, the ATP 500. That's the only event.
What do you do for that outfit, that tournament?
I am one of the tournament directors. So I'm the director of relations for the tournament. So I do a lot of the stuff with related to the players, related to sponsors, related to basically I do a little bit of everything. You know,
How many years have you been with that event?
9 years. Ever since it started. So I was part of the since I had all the board experience and all the ATP relationship, I was part of the process of helping the company to buy the sanction to bring it over and the people to organize it. So I was running an event, a challenging event, at the same place that we run now, the ATP 500.
We're talking about American junior tennis and Everett's, and so many positives with that. Obviously, so many questions that could be asked. But what about TV? What about being a commentator? What are your thoughts on that?
Loved it. Yeah, and this is something that I understood once I stopped playing, and I realized, Jesus, how dumb was I when I was playing, you know? Because, in a good sense, you start seeing so many things when you're out of the court and you're not playing that it's amazing.
Well, you have such a long journey, lifetime in tennis.
Yeah, and you know, with that, so I was thinking the other day, I could easily jump on tour again because I've seen so many matches. You know, all the Masters 1000 events, I would do 4 matches a day up until the finals. All the slams. What? I watched more matches than any guy on tour because I was commentating. So, you know, I see the patterns. A lot of times I see, oh, Jesus, that's, you know, this guy's going to serve here, this guy's going to do that, this guy. And the funny thing, Steve, is that if I was on tour now, I would love it because now these guys have all these stats and all these background things that I've seen that I would love to be a part of.
Did you work with Fernando as a commentator at the same time?
No, he's working at a different channel. Yeah.
You guys, that would be a good team,
Yeah,
right?
it would have been lovely for us to be like together. Yeah, I've actually done a few things with him on live shows. We've gone together. He has actually invited me into ESPN to be part of like a show with during the tournaments, but not commentating matches. So, but yeah, commentating matches is great because, especially when you know a few things. And obviously now I don't know that much because I've been away, but a few years back there were a lot of guys that still knew a little bit about the coaches. I still have a lot of relationship with coaches, so a lot of times I call the guys and I say, hey, what's going on with this that guy? And so guys would give me, oh, this guy's doing this guy's doing that. And
without mentioning any names, if you were to be a critic for TV commentators, what comes to your mind? I've always teased and said I'm going to put an ad in Tennis Magazine. And years ago, Tennis Magazine was expensive. It was like as thick as a small phone book. Mm-hmm. It'd be thousands and thousands of dollars for an ad. And say, okay, I have a clinic for television commentators. If you were a critic, without mentioning names, again, what would come to your mind? How could tennis on TV be better? You know, what do you think are some of the? I mean, you take the high road. There's positives. I mean, I love to listen to really anybody talk about tennis. I mean, I'm not going to turn the volume down, but at the same time, I find myself. Of course, you know, I come from the position of being more of a technician, and you know, sometimes. I think more and more of the players, I've heard Courier say many times here as of late, and Lendo's always been, you know, he hasn't done TV so much, but he's the first one to say, no, that's not my area. I don't do forehands and backhands. Mm-hmm. Where a lot of people just think that they do, but Courier said, well, that's not my area of expertise. But what comes to your mind to help a commentator, if you were a commentator's coach?
First of all, if you're going to say the obvious that everybody can see, why say it? That's one thing that my criticism when I see someone commentating, oh, yeah, the guy hit a great forehand cross-court. Jeez, I saw that. You know?
Yeah, one of our commentators in the U.S., you know, you spent so much time in the U.S., Howard Cosell, who used to do so many things with Muhammad Ali, he used to say, he's a prophet of the obvious. You know, tell me something I don't know.
Yeah, I think that if you're commentating something, you're going to give some insights to someone that they can see it. So if I'm going to be there to say, oh, nice cross-court forehand, nice, oh, he aced him wide. Well, why did he ace him wide? You know, I mean, give him more insight. Give him something that this guy is going to say, Jesus, I didn't see that. Jesus, why? Because, he got tight. I mean, this is what's going to happen. Hey, he hit this double fault because 4 points earlier, the other guy ran around his forehand and hit a winner. And something, you know, I see sometimes the obvious. Sometimes when you commentate, I see some guys commentating the obvious. and then that doesn't add to anything. So if you don't bring anything extra, then why are you there? Just to call out the score?
Yeah, no, that's a great comment. Back to junior tennis, you and I have sat courtside. Seems like there's a lot more cheating now.
Oh my gosh. Jesus. I've seen some absurd stuff, and it's really disgusting.
You know, you growing up, I just think of all those practice sets you played. When I had the chance to observe you playing for 2 years, you could try different things. You know, it's not like it's like now every match is going to be put on a computer screen. A kid's 12 years old, and it's going to go on his record, and somebody can, with their fingertips, just look up and say how did they do in that tournament. And everybody's, you know, I just think that's too much too soon and I think there's so much anxiety.
For sure.
That wasn't
Kids
there
nowadays,
before.
they walk on court with a lot of stuff on their mind. Doesn't help. But the cheating for me is absurd. I think something that needs to be done. I mean, it gets to a point that I don't know. I mean, I feel shame when I see some of the things that are happening. It's not what the sport is about. It's not about what the competition is about. It's not what life is about. You know,
Yeah.
It's just some of the things that I see is they have and the thing is, nobody's doing anything about it. Nobody's doing anything about it. To the contrary, I think that a lot of times I'm seeing referees and umpires running away from the situations, not to confront it.
Yeah, no. Even when they were asked to come out, many times they're going to go with a call, even as bad as it was. They're going to go with a call, so there's not a confrontation.
Not just that. Sometimes they're there and they don't want to participate. They're there, but they're not there. They're hoping that the kids, by them being there, don't do it. So it's for me, it's like,
Oh, then sometimes the way they talk to officials, very, very rude, very obnoxious.
yeah, well, yeah, I don't see I was not a saint on court. You know, I was feisty on court. You know?
Yeah.
But I remember talking to my relationship with the umpires on tour were very good. And I remember talking to a couple guys that were like traveling umpires on the ATP, and they said, "Yeah, you were really tough when you were on court." They said, "Yeah, because I mean, I knew how to approach you, I knew how to talk to you, and I knew, how to complain, and I knew my boundaries. So, but I was not unfair. I was not trying to cheat. I was just holding my own, So,
Do you remember Steve Ulrich? Steve Ulrich. He might have. He called.
Oh, of course, American Steve Walker. Sure, yes.
Yeah, I thought you
sure,
guys would be at the same
for
time.
sure, 100%, sure.
He went to Tyler Junior College Tennis Tech.
I can't believe it.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Sure, he umpired my matches for sure.
Yeah, he did. He was big time. And
Yes.
With of course he would. The way it still works that way, I'm pretty sure you'd have to tell me that if two Americans were playing each other in the final, or just one American, he is an American, he would not be calling that match.
A lot of times they had some of these rules in place. I don't know if they're still doing that. I have to tell you the truth now, because they have the guys. They've had this for a while. But the traveling umpires were the certified guys, and they're like the pros of the umpires.
I used to call him Seven because I think he had 7 different degrees, and he was from Indiana, and he came down to do the 2-year program, so he was. For us, it was like, okay, Steve Ulrich, he's made it to Wimbledon. He's from our little 2-year program. But we had the umpire school every year.
Really?
Did it for a weekend. It was not the most exciting thing. You read the rule book page by page, and
we've had some good umpires in Brazil. Carlos Bernardes is still on. Carlos is. I just saw him doing a match the Rune match that Rune had, and that he was like discussing with him the change.
Yeah.
So this guy, I've known him since he was like young, because he started as a linesman in the Challengers or Futures in Brazil, and now he's one of the traveling umpires on the tour. But
People know. I mean, Steve Olick, he took the role of a starving artist. I mean, how do you make it to the big time? He really paid his dues.
I bet. No, they all paid his dues. These
in,
guys
in every walk of life, basically.
No, but these guys, they have to come from. It's not given. They have to do from way below and come up. It's not easy to get there, and it's very few positions also.
One person told me about Steve Ulrich is that the reason he became so good is the first year he only said one word. Second year he said 2 words. He never got more than 3 words. He was so quiet.
Yes, he was really on his own.
He didn't get rattled. I mean, people be yelling and screaming at him, and
I remember him. Yeah, sure, for sure. He was a cool guy. Yeah. A good umpire is exactly like that. It's basically you don't remember him,
This is probably Frank Hammond and Mike Blanchard a little before your time, or no?
I remember the scene at U.S. Open. Yeah, I wasn't playing no.
I was helping with a fundraiser, a corporate outing. It was a fundraiser, a corporate outing and fundraiser. One of our students, Guy Weinold. So I end up there, and I take like 6 teaching pros with me, and Stan Smith is one of the name players, and the person in the chair. And the main event was in Tulsa. It was Ponca City, Oklahoma. Then we end up in Tulsa, and there's like 5,000 people, and the chairperson doesn't show up. And Stan Smith said, I was asked to do it. And I said, yeah, I've been in the chair before, not with 5,000 people. And he said, you'll make it or break it. The umpire, he goes, without a score. And I said, you want Frank Hammond or Mike Blanchard? And I was up there going, advantage, Smith. He was playing Tim Gullickson. I remember he told me, you should tone it down a little bit, because I was just doing commentary. If you watch so many matches, you can copy the person's voice almost. But yeah, at the grassroots level, we have some laughs with stories, but it's not funny with all the cheating.
What can be done? You know what I was thinking? The other day I was at an ITF event. Well, this is happening now in Florida now, these 3 tournaments that are happening. My son is playing. And I went to a tournament in Puerto Rico a few weeks ago, about a month ago. And I was thinking, why don't these referees, they kind of, let me go back. When we were on the satellite tour, there was a mandatory meeting for all players on Sunday every 6 o'clock. So you're playing a satellite before every tournament on 6 o'clock. Everybody had to be there. And then, Gail Bradshaw, who was, Gail Bradshaw, an ATP supervisor. I don't know if you know Gail, but.
Oh, I remember the name. Yeah.
So he was in the USTA.
And when I was tall, lean guy. Yeah.
Exactly. So he's officiating. He was the major guy of the ATP officiating. So Gail was like doing the USTA tournaments. The satellites. Gail would stand up and he'd say, the rules and whatever and this and that, And there was also a dinner. Also, normally there was a dinner for the players, and then there was this meeting. And on this meeting, they would say some things. So why don't they have that and tell the kids, hey, institute something like, we're going to be cracking down on cheating. And if you're overruled by an umpire on the first, you're overruled for the whole week. You're not overruled for the match. So the next one, you lose a point. On your second round, if you're overruled by the umpire, it's not the point. You lose a point. Something like that to stop this. This is bullshit. Some kids are known. The other day I saw, my son showed it to me. There was a tournament online of the biggest cheaters. They did. Some kid put like an Instagram, and they were like voting whoever wins the round. And they went round by round to see whoever won. Can you believe that?
That's too much.
Yeah.
Well, they probably did this when you were a kid. I've seen this done in many countries where you have an arbitrator. So one kid, I think of being in Sweden where they're the big umbrella and the umpire's chair, and so the kid's not standing at the net post in the hot sun, but they sit down and they have to learn to project, announce the score, keep the audience in tune, and it's much better if somebody's announcing score out loud. You're sitting there, the match is more enjoyable. And the kid has to sit in the chair, and then if there's a question, they overrule. And I think that would be much better. And they do that in other countries. Cut down the expense. And I think that's another thing too, is that the entry fees people are paying more. The parents are paying more money, and the kids are playing less tennis. I mean, there's no third set. They're playing no ad. The back draws to 4.
Yeah.
But to have the young kid, you have to do one match a day. You have to sit in the chair one match a day, and announce the score. But if there's, you can't have a cousin in the chair. I mean, but I think that would be good. What about Everett's? Talk to us a little about Chris Everett. You're talking about Guga being humble. One of my favorite Everett stories. She was born the same year I was, and so I mean I've grown up watching and reading about Chris Everett, and she wins the Canadian Open, and she's looking at the list of champions, and she reads that her father had won the tournament, and she never knew that her father had won the tournament.
Wow.
Talk about humble.
Yes.
I had the chance one time to spend 3 days on his court, just watching him teach tennis at the old. Now the place is rightfully named after him, the Holiday Park. But there's a tennis mind. What comes to your mind knowing Chris Everett? I see her sometimes at the Battle of Boca, and she's just over by herself, and no one,
Right.
the sea of Rick Macy signs, and there's Chris
Right.
Chris Everett with all her majors, and
Yeah.
just unbelievable record in tennis, and very unassuming, and she's over there, and people don't even know that's her sitting there with her
Right.
baseball cap.
Well, she, like you said, humble. I think that's a good way to project her. In terms of she doesn't. I don't see her as a person like that. She wants to be on the limelight of anything, but you feel her presence at the point that she comes in. I see her involvement with the girls. Like whenever she's in town, she's always at the academy. She arrives early, goes to the courts, especially with the girls, and she's over there talking. She's over there communicating, participating. Sometimes she's there hitting. She hits.
Even recently with
Recently she hasn't been doing much, but before the treatment that she's done, she used to hit quite a bit. And sometimes getting frustrated, because obviously she wants, the kids to reach the better level and get involved. She cares a lot. I see her getting to the girls, getting on a personal basis with a lot of the girls. And you can see her tennis IQ is huge. Its perception she has a sharp mind in terms of that. So...
her ball striking it's just amazing when you hear people say the modern game is. I always say, put your racket in the bag. Actually, I heard Warren Pretorius, I'm stealing his line, is the modern game, when you hear that, take your rackets, put them in your shoulder bag, and run away as fast as possible. Because, the game has evolved.
Right.
But, if people just, the way she hit a backhand, it's just like on the men's side with it. You go to Connors, to Agassi, to Djokovic. The similarities far outweigh the differences.
Right.
But I think consistency.
Yes.
The 125 matches a row on clay.
Yeah, that and a lot of times, a few times she even forgets those stats. Like when we got to the pandemic, she started doing. I said, "Hey, Chrissy, let me organize." She was doing some. She talked to Martina. She talked to Wawrinka. She talked to a few people, like having those lives. And then I started bringing out these stats.
Like how many times she's been in the quarterfinals, how many times she's been in the semis.
And she goes, wow.
Wow, it's just incredible.
Yeah. And I was going like, geez, this is amazing. You lost 2 matches in 7 years. And you go, really? I don't know that I just made up that one, but it's like, it's unbelievable. That 125 is like, geez, how many years is that? The span of how many years she was not losing a match? She played 54 Grand Slams, right? No, or 56. She only missed 4 of them in the semis. So 52, she got to the semis. Who can say that?
I can remember. I came to Florida in '74 when I was 19, so she would have been 19 too. And with, yeah, I mean, obviously someone like Everett, I'm going to guess December birthday, December 54. We have a fact checker, but it's definitely born in 54. But in the Sun Centennial, one of the Fort Lauderdale News, her oldest brother, Drew, was, I think, playing at Auburn. And, you know, your sister is Chris Everett. You know, I was like, well, no, I can beat Chrissy. And they asked Chrissy, she said, definitely on hard court. You know, I mean, those are the things. I just love the character side of tennis. You know,
Yes.
definitely on hard court. But just amazing. Let me go with nonsense. Do you know why your polo shirt's so expensive?
No, but I always try to buy them when they're on sale. So
The man on the horse is wearing an Izod shirt. That's a boom. I mean, your laugh. My students don't laugh at my jokes. But you've done so many things in your career. I think, you know, a writer, we should go back to the sitcom of all your different chapters in your life, to go back to, I wrote this down, Bob Wiley would be the character. He would be the, so yeah, you haven't written a sitcom, right? So a 30-minute TV show, we should do that. And do you remember these names? Tom Gatone, Rennie Troxler, Mike Rogers.
Mike Rogers, yes.
Those were those three are from Connecticut. They were the original three. Then it was kind of like the Beatles, and Bob Wiley joined in. And then
Mike, I remember. The other two, I'm not remembering, but Mike, yes.
if you saw the thing, if you saw their a picture of them, you could. They were obviously the guys from Connecticut. They were good tennis players, but it was a whole different level. The level of tennis that was played in junior college tennis was amazing. But no, it's been great to have you on. So many takeaways. So we'll have to get together and write that sitcom.
All right. Let's do it.
Bob Wiley.
Oh, Bob, yeah.
It's, you know, some of the stories that we could, you know, now there's the censorship. I mean, we could go with the real Bob Wiley. What's on TV today?
That's true. That is true. Bob, it was a character. Bob, I think he lived in Plano, Texas, which is right outside.
No, yeah, he's from Dallas. I
Dallas,
think he lives out in
Plano.
California now,
Yeah.
right?
Is he in California?
Yeah.
And he used to play the racket guitar, you know?
Yeah.
Because, you know.
He always had that music blaring.
Exactly. We used to listen to Def Leppard and all these rock bands, and he was like, you know, mimicking the guitar on the racket. And then we went to a Ozzy Osbourne concert in Dallas. Oh, I got out of there with my ears were like, we sat right by it was so loud. I mean, Bob was a character. Jeez.
Well, I think that's one thing too, is that you had fun away from the game.
Yeah.
And maybe sometimes a little too much fun, but when it comes to Wiley, but we'll have to go off air and start telling Bob Wiley stories. But in others, you know, for me, I don't know why. Maybe it's my mother who's a nostalgic storyteller, or being the youngest of 8, you know, a family of 6, and you don't have a speaking part. I just got to listen. So then years later, I get to tell some stories. But that period of time, you know, 42 years ago, you and I, you were there a little before, because I came in October. I remember it came October 1st. And I had the challenge of, okay, I'm going to try to revise this program, and put the cast of characters. It was a very small group. It was, you know, there was the women. They played very high level too.
Yes. I keep in touch with Tina Sawyer. I don't know if you remember Tina.
No, I do. Or Serve. I remember Serve. I got in trouble with her Serve. Very nice lady. Very classy lady.
She's involved with the LTA. She's
Pernilla Hallberg was there.
Pernilla was my girlfriend for a while.
The Swede.
She
was tough mentally.
Yes.
Tina, though, you know, that goes way back, where I remember the coach finally asking me to help her with her serve, and it was like right before they're going to nationals, and I remember, and I could be wrong with this, that her mom had helped her, so we had to be a little bit sensitive, and but you know, there's a gal who she had some hiccups with the serve. I remember.
Tina,
she does something at Wimbledon now.
She's involved with the LTA. She's always, every time I go to London, I cross with her. You know, I kind of when I finished at South Carolina and I graduated, what I did? I went to London and I stayed at her house for like 3 days, and then it was my point of entry in Europe. And then she said, well, you have to go to the French Federation, get your ranking, and then you can start playing the money tournaments in France. And then I stayed there at her house with her mother and everybody.
Wow.
For a couple of days. We even went to the pub and it was like, I don't forget it because I asked for a beer and it was like so hot. And I'm going, Jesus, man, give me a cold beer. It's like, this is cold. I'm going, oh, boy.
It's like back in the day in London, if you asked for iced tea, they would bring you a spoon with one ice cube on it.
Yes. That's you drive me mad. I'm going, Jesus, can you put some ice in this thing? There's plenty of ice in there. I'm going, Jesus.
No, they didn't even remember. They didn't know what iced tea was.
No.
But Hallberg from Sweden, there was another girl, and that's how it worked.
I saw Pernilla when I went to play in Stockholm.
Okay.
Yeah, when I went to play in Stockholm, I saw her. Yeah.
But there was one player from Sweden, and there was like they would recommend a friend.
Right.
This is a great story to end on. There's a young girl from Sweden playing, and I was not coaching the girl, but I ran the tournament, and it happened during the tournament. So, she has problems with her feet, and they take a timeout, and her, one foot's, really bloody, and they start to clean it. She said, no, don't wipe off the blood. It will help me fight in the third set.
Oh, wow.
Those are the stories that like, okay, that was worth hanging around for today. We worked a long day, but that was just one pearl to take away. But give me the high five. That was fantastic.
Yeah.
That was a guest. I
enjoyed it.
Really enjoyed it. And I know our listeners will. But
right.
How do you say it in Brazil? Ciao?
Ciao.
Ciao. All right. Wave to the camera, Ricardo. We're going to be looking up Bob Wiley. Thanks. That was great.
All right.